TikTok time to rock. I am back with the dynamic duo, Dennis and the Menace, Michael Jackson and Tito. As you know, Mike Jones and AP. Oh, and David Wood is here too. So
Robin.
Batman and Robin. Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Hey, heard you wanted it.
Your intro sounds kind of familiar. It's very nice though. Best music.
It is. Every time I gotta have you on, I gotta invite you with this amazing intro I just found by chance. I just feel like it's
he's I think AP, the reason it sounds familiar is he's been using it for years and then you copied it.
Oh yeah.
Don't you know that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how you doing, David?
It's always these immigrants stealing the intro music. Yeah.
So, all right. So I stumbled upon a video about a month or so ago of our good old friend Daniel Haqiqatjou, who we all love and adore for his amazing representation of Islam. Once again, promoting child marriage on a channel I hadn't heard of until I saw this on Kim Iversen's channel. Have you heard of her, AP?
I have. She follows me on Twitter and every so often comments on my posts with ridiculous things. She's not very smart, not very bright, not very well informed. And no, David, this has nothing to do with her being a woman. Stop thinking like this about women. It has nothing to do with that at all.
Hey, you're the one with the guilty conscience. You're the one with the guilty conscience. I didn't say a word. You're just.
And so
everything AP says. And by the way, it's not racist when I say it. And I'm not a misogynist when I say that women are stupid.
Well, yeah. So I know her from there, and I have interactions with her every so often. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she interviewed Daniel Haqiqatjou, and she let him go wild. She let him talk about why slavery is a good thing, and then they had a whole segment on child marriage. She even tried to push back a little bit in this interview, being like, I don't know about that, but she obviously wasn't prepared for his blatant lies. And so as I promised, I would stand against Daniel for the rest of his life on this very topic. Here we are to show how Daniel once again is lying yet again to promote child marriage. Using blatant lies, we will show how some of his own sources debunk him. Because, I don't know if he expected us to find this, but I just happened to stumble upon it a few months ago. So, yeah, here we are again, where Daniel is once again lying to promote child marriage.
She actually pushed back, though?
A little bit. Yeah, she pushed back in some ways. She was at some points going like, you could kind of tell the stuff that he was saying was red flags were going off in her head, but she hadn't heard these arguments before. So at some points she didn't know how to respond. She didn't realize he was flat out lying to her. So I'll give her credit where credit is due. She definitely did push back at times and said, I don't know about this whole thing here. Are you sure about that? So we'll get into it when we get into the video, but yeah, she did push back.
Yeah. And by the way, there's a reason for all. I mean, years ago, I named this Islam's 99-1 rule because I'd been seeing the exact same pattern since the origins of Islam. When Muhammad is talking amongst a bunch of pagan polytheists who wouldn't know the Torah from a phone book, who wouldn't know the gospel from a phone book, and he's sitting there he's telling them, hey, I'm in the Torah and I'm in the gospel. I'm in the Torah and I'm in the gospel. These people have no idea what's in there. And so he's able to convince them that he's in there. Then later on, when he actually runs into Christians and Jews and they expose him as a false prophet, they're like, what are you talking about? We don't know what you're not in our book. It's, oh, you see, they're lying. They're covering it up. This proves that they're evil. But you've got his entire group and they're all completely convinced that he's in our books and that we're covering it up. And so this dawah works in an atmosphere of ignorance, and you get all the way up to like the time of Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik, when they would just say all these things about whatever argument they're defending about scientific miracles in the Quran. How many people in the audience know anything about what they're talking about? No one. If they're talking about the perfect preservation of the Quran, how many people in the audience know anything about what they're talking about, or have examined what the Muslim sources say about the preservation of the Quran, or have examined the manuscripts? They've never done any of that. They're just listening to this guy. So the general rule in Islam, in Dawah, has always been Make something up. It doesn't matter. You could say something in defense of Islam. If you know that, let's say 99% of the audience is just going to accept it and not question it.
Mhm.
And maybe at most, it's not even this, it's way less than 1%, but just to be generous, we'll say 1 out of 100. If 1 out of 100 people are actually going to go look it up and find out that you're a liar, who cares? You just won the 99 and you got the 1, and the 99 can silence the 1. The 99 can kill the 1 if you need them to, right? The 99 can form a mob and silence the 1. So this has always been the pattern in Dawah. And the reason it's starting to break down a bit is now it becomes way easier for the one person to jump online and expose what just happened. But they're glued into this method. They have no plan B. This has always been the method. And so right now they're looking for pockets of ignorance. And so you'll have Daniel Haqiqatjou, if he knows he's going on some show with some woman who knows absolutely nothing, that's an opportunity in his mind, this is an opportunity to spread a bunch of lies, because she'll have a bunch of dumb followers who are not going to look any of this up. And keep in mind, even after you expose the lies right here, the vast majority of people who saw the lie are not going to see your response. And so in his mind, it's still a good methodology. Just keep making stuff up to defend pedophilia and child marriage, and thus defend Muhammad. And it doesn't matter if you're lying, if you just lie well enough and you get to enough ignorant people. And what they still haven't caught on to is this is kind of catching up with them, because every little bit of people, every little bit of people who catch on to the lies, that's more people who can expose them next time. And so they're going to end up with a situation where it's not going to be 99-1. It's all of a sudden it's going to be 95-5, then 90-10, and then 80-20. And they're going to run out of people. Their ability to deceive people with impunity is coming to a close, looks like.
Yeah. I just can't believe they think they're on the side of good, fighting for the creator, when they're defending demonstrable suffering to girls through lies, playing on ignorance, direct deception. And Daniel's got to know he's lying at this point. He's been exposed on this before, and he just went on some new channel, thought he could get away with the lies, but that's all he's doing. And I will show you from sources he has used that he's obviously aware of that he is lying, because his sources he has cited in the past are going to debunk him here.
Well, here's the thing, IP. So you're talking about the immense suffering that women and that girls go through as a result of child marriage, but you never talk about the immense suffering that the men go through because of their sexual desires to have these child brides. Yeah.
Those poor pedophiles. Those poor pedophiles. Someone's got to stand up for them, and Daniel is there to make sure he stands up for the old pedophiles. Yes,
not all heroes wear capes. Yeah. But what David is saying though is that this is a very good strategy. Yes. David basically summarized a very good way to propagate a lot of things. So it looks like this might be something that we might want to adopt. To lie and then convince 99% and let the 1% be silenced. This is a good tactic.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So, all right, get to some of these. Thank you to you and Sijuwadi. I'm getting more convinced of monarchical Trinitarianism. But what do the CF have to say about it? Could you point me to their work? CF. Sorry, Mars. I'm not sure what you mean by CF. I'm not sure what that's an abbreviation for. I probably would know it if you gave it. It doesn't ring any bells right now. So maybe send another comment and I'll look for it.
Counterfactualist.
Counterfactualist. Yeah, that's a good question about the counterfactualist. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I've not thought about that too much, and something I would like to study more. So I'd have to look more into that.
I just made that up.
Well, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. David, you decided to go live with IP after he betrayed you and hung out with Mike Winger. Looks like you're a very forgiving man.
Well, yeah, we have no. I've told you before, next Zakernike, that we don't know why Mike was going there. Was it true siding with Mike Winger, or was he infiltrating the Wingerling camp to destroy it from within? We will judge him accordingly.
I can neither confirm nor deny until the plan comes to fruition. So we'll just have to see how the moles work out.
By the way, the comments say that CF might mean church fathers, although I kind of lean toward the idea that it might mean cryogenic freeze.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, most of the church fathers were monarchical Trinitarian. That's one of Sijuati's points. It's church, like if you read like, you know, Tertullian, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, they very much lean in that direction. So it seems very much that's the traditional view of Trinitarianism. Sup, guys? I still believe in IP convincing Daniel to swap he kick a Jew for he follow a Jew.
I'm almost in favor, given how much this guy defends the most perverted, disgusting things. I'm thinking about calling him Daniel Haqiqatjou or something. Haqiqatjou or something like that.
That makes sense. All right, I'm gonna start playing some of this video. When you guys want to rip your ears out, just let me know, and I will then cut to that. So, all right, let's get into this. Started about here.
Going back to this pre-Enlightenment vision of the world. So now, you know, not only would there be these roles and what we're supposed to be doing, but there would be child marriage, and there would be, well, I don't, let's not talk about child marriage because
no, let's talk about it because you've mentioned it a few times. So I think I should just say a few words about
it. Daniel will never pass up an opportunity to defend pedophiles. Here, she tries to give him a way out. He's like,
you brought it up, lady. You brought it up, lady. We're not skipping over this.
Oh, did I hear child marriage? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
She gave him an out, and he's like, "No, throw me in, coach. I want to go." People need to know I defend pedophiles everywhere.
You're not skipping past this one, honey.
Okay, child marriage.
Yeah, so it's, you know, I prefer the term minor marriage, but
okay.
The reality about the modern world is that children are very sexually active. Children in the modern world are very sexually active. And
when you say, so can we like clarify on age? Because you've said minor versus children. So like what age group are you talking about?
So that's the whole debate, right? The whole debate is about who defines what a child is and what an adult is. And historically, that dividing line has been on the basis of puberty. You go through puberty, and that can start. Puberty can start as young as.
He's already got a problem right there.
Yeah.
If he wants to say that the dividing line is puberty, and he says historically that that's the case. If that's his position, if his position is that the dividing line between a child and an adult is puberty, when we all know that puberty is a process that takes years and so on. But if he wants to say puberty is the dividing line, great. The Quran allows sex with prepubescent girls. Muhammad Hijab said there's no way around it. There's no way around the fact that the Quran allows sex with prepubescent girls. And according to the Hadith, Muhammad had sex with Aisha before puberty, before she reached puberty. So even going with his definition, Muhammad was a pedophile.
Yes. Yeah. And if the dividing line is not puberty historically, it's menarche, when the girl gets her first period, which happens in Tanner stage 4. So very late in puberty. Puberty was always understood to be a process. They didn't think, oh, you got a pubic hair, therefore you have crossed over into adulthood. If you read a lot of ancient writers, which we'll get into, I have a slide up I'll show later, but a lot of them said, no, it's when the first period happens, which in the ancient world was happening on average about 16 and a half, not 9. So he's just misrepresenting the data, which we'll get into in a little bit here.
Yeah, it definitely makes it sound like throughout history it was like, I don't know, the parents would look at a little girl and say, oh, I see a lump on your chest. Why are you not pregnant yet? Like, this is how it historically went. It's ridiculously stupid. What a dumb misrepresentation of things.
Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse.
Is 6 or 7 years old.
Hold on. Oh, wait a minute. Let me back up here.
And on the basis of puberty, you go through puberty, and puberty can start as young as 6 or 7 years old. About 4% of girls complete puberty by age 9 in America today.
4% complete puberty. What? Okay, let me just play that again to make sure we actually heard him say that incredibly stupid thing.
Puberty can start as young as 6 or 7 years old. About 4% of girls complete puberty by age 9 in America today, according to the U.S. Department of Health.
Okay, that's completely false. That is completely 100% false.
4% complete puberty.
No, I know where he's getting this from. I know exactly.
By age 9? By age 9, did he say?
Yeah, by age 9 is what he said.
I'm jotting down the claim. 4% complete puberty by age 9. So that's the entire process done. by age 9.
Yes.
Okay.
So here's where he's getting this from. I know because he has cited this before, and I'll show you the statistic. This is something he cited when he had his anonymous racist doctor on when he was trying to refute me in AP in those live streams. And this is one of the sources they use. If you scroll down here, I have it highlighted to your chart here. This is this is the 4%. You can see 4% age 9. So age at menarche, not age at completing puberty. Age of menarche is not when you complete puberty. Age of menarche is when you have your first period, which he knows happens in Tanner stage 4, not when puberty has been finished. He is misrepresenting the data. And he said, if you recall, he said, according to the, the Department of Health and Human Services. So that he said, according to the Department of Health and Human Services, girls complete puberty. 4% of girls complete puberty by age 9. That's false. The actual source that he has cited in the past is that at 4% of girls will have their first period by age 9. But that doesn't mean they complete puberty. That's ridiculous. So he has misrepresented what the actual data shows. It's not this idea that there are some 9-year-olds walking around that look like they're 17 or 18 when you actually do complete puberty as a girl. That's ridiculous. So he's completely misrepresented the data here.
But that would be the first time.
Yeah, we're going to see more. I'm going to show you in real time. We're going to go find one of his sources where he just completely lies. Also, he said that, children are very sexually active. Well, in this very source, it actually has stuff on that. So let me scroll down to this chart here. So cumulative probability of first sexual intercourse among women age 15 to 44. Okay, so age of menarche. So when a girl has their first period, if they have it 10 and under, by 14, roughly 20% have been sexually active. If they have their first period at age 11, roughly 16% have had been sexually active by age 14. The average basically seems about roughly by about at age 14, only about 14% of girls have been sexually active. If they don't have their period till 14 or over, it's about 5%. So this idea that children are being extremely sexually active is not supported by the data. He is just lying. It's not that high. 14-year-olds are not running around having sex. And I have another source here I can throw up here. We can go even younger. So
why is he talking about when girls complete puberty anyway, when to him it is just showing signs of puberty is already enough to be disqualified as a child and to qualify as an adult?
well, that's true. He did say in the cross-examination of my debate with him that you can start consummating a marriage with a girl before she even reaches the age of menarche. Yeah. So obviously he's fine with that. But
did he change now? Is he reforming his beliefs, or what's happening here? I don't get it.
Who knows? But this says that sexual activity and pregnancy are rare among 10 and 12-year-olds. And when sexual activity occurs at such early ages, it is frequently non-consensual. According to an analysis of data from 2006 to 2010, about 1% of 12-year-old females have had sex. The proportion is still in contrast to 19% of 15-year-olds. 32% of 16-year-olds. So very low amounts. Okay, it's not, and when it happens so young at that age, it's typically not because they're wanting it. Daniel is just completely misrepresenting the data here. It's not the case that girls in America, 12, 13, are running around having rampant sex like he likes to say constantly. So he is just getting the data wildly wrong.
And it's stupid reasoning that he would not accept in other areas. So what he's going to, I'm guessing the reasoning is, hey, since a tiny percentage of girls who are very young are having sex, therefore you need to marry them and bang them, something like that. But I mean, what the heck? I mean, you could find more 12-year-olds who drank alcohol. So I guess you should just legalize alcohol for them or something like that, right? Or like what's the reasoning there? If someone's doing it, therefore you need to make it halal. What the heck is he even talking about? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's basically the argument is like when you become sexually you start getting sexual desires, you should therefore get married because you won't be able to control those desires. And it's like,
yeah, okay, guys,
good.
Oh, I was just going to point out that throughout this entire discussion, as we're responding to Daniel Haqiqatjou making false claims, misrepresenting studies, misrepresenting the data, all in a defense of child marriage, just keep in mind, he's offering the position that you wait for signs of maturity. So you at least wait for puberty to start I want to be clear. That is not what his sources say at all. So as repulsive as you find Daniel Haqiqatjou's claims about having sex with girls who've just started puberty and so on, that is not at all what his religion requires. Muhammad had sex with Aisha before puberty. The Quran specifically talks, Surah 65, verse 4, about marrying, having sex with, and divorcing, and then passing on to the next guy, little girls, all before they've ever reached puberty. So as revolting as you find his claims about just pouncing on these girls, and we really need to be marrying little 9 and 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old girls to start having sex with them as quickly as possible before they the tiny percentage of them actually has sex with someone else. We need to do this right now. As revolting as you find all of this, keep in mind he is massively morally superior to his God and his prophet, who don't care about any of these things. You don't have any requirement about waiting for anything. You do have in the Muslim schools of Islamic jurisprudence concerns about damaging a girl or doing irreparable harm to a girl. And so they actually apply some rules about waiting, but they're not concerned about puberty. They're concerned mainly about whether the girl is so small that you're going to break her. You're going to break her while having sex with her. And two, that you're going to make the 2 holes one. You're going to give her you're going to tear her. You're going to tear. She's so small that you're going to tear her open and turn the 2 holes into 1 hole. You're going to rip her open. You've damaged the girl. You've damaged the girl. So why do you want to damage your wife like that and ruin her for the future? And so those are the kinds of things they're concerned about. So anyway, just as awful as Daniel is, he's better than his religion, and that should tell you something about his religion.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on.
But the point is that defining, what's funny is that conservatives have this kind of biological definition of man versus woman. And this is why transgenderism is wrong, because we have man and woman. That's a biological fact. Well, then what is the biological fact of defining a child versus an adult? And when you start talking about biology, then conservatives suddenly say, no, it's what society says. Society says 18. But this is a very artificial where it's based. If you look at history, the number 18 was only arrived at because of modern schooling and this kind of program to socialize.
No, that is completely false.
One second. Let me play a couple more seconds. I'm going to stop it in 10 seconds here.
The population according to this public education program. And then you finish 18, your high school, then you go into the workforce. But it's all artificial. Biologically.
All right. Go ahead, AP. Yeah.
How often are we going to talk about this, and how often is he going to make the same claim? And this is just a clear example, clear proof that he has no intention to ever actually listen to those who correct him, and then to correct his own mistakes, because he knows very well by now that this is not the case. That society didn't just through modern schooling and so on decide to randomly put this arbitrary number on adulthood, call it 18, and say okay, let's just go by 18. And conservatives are like, when is somebody an adult? What does society say? 18? Oh, okay. I guess it's 18 then. When you're 18, you're an adult. That's not how it happened.
No.
This is not how it happened. It has a long history of the study of biology, of sexual development and physical development of a person, of an average human, very important here, average human, of the psychological development of an average human, where and I'm sure you can provide more detail here, IP, where it is statistically looked at where when puberty begins on average and when it is completed on average, and then after puberty is completed, there is a grace period given to it generally, and then it is set to approximately that age where people generally decide, after that age, you are probably an adult and you're probably ready to go your way. Right?
Yeah, these are slides I used in my debate with him. So he should know this. Like the CDC, most girls will be physically mature by what ages? Between 15 and 17. So it's a process. Puberty is a process, but of physical maturation where an adolescent reaches sexual maturity and becomes capable of reproduction. So the reason why we've set it at 18 is why? Because this is when girls' hips have fully developed. They have gone through puberty. Most of their brain is developed. And there's historical precedence here. Going all the way back to Cyrannus of Ephesus, he noted that you should not be getting girls pregnant when they're too young because of the small birth canal, because of what he says, the small orifice or the small neck. They're not ready to bear children. In the Middle Ages, this is, again, slides from my debate with him that he just seems to have forgotten. Kim Phillips notes Albert Magnus stated that while the physical changes associated with puberty enable boys and girls to feel desire and enter sexual relations, the seed in both parties was either too weak or not yet emitted, so that weak offspring or none at all would result. Gals of Rome are advocated for a delay until the age of 18 for women. So this is in the Middle Ages. Gals of Rome is already advocating that women should delay pregnancy until 18. We see also that what she says, late medieval English evidence of ages at marriage and motherhood indicates the canon legal theory on women's marriageable age offers a very limited perspective. Canon legal age said 12, but the social beliefs and practice provide a more reliable view of girls' transition to adulthood. It would be a mistake to see marriage below or around the age of puberty as the norm for young noble women. So numerous historians have noted that it actually happened much later. Michael Flynn notes it happens in the 20s. Brent Shaw says it's happening between 16 and 21. Rudolph Bell notes in Italian communities, mid-20s. Peter Laslett, it says in England, okay, it was around 22. Okay, in Warsaw, okay, 21, around 20.1 for women. And why is that? Well, one of the big myths that a lot of Muslims say is that girls matured faster in the past. But this is the complete opposite is true. If you look at it, girls are maturing quicker now due to better nutrition. The age of menarche was delayed till around 16 and a half years. Now it's around 13 for girls. So girls weren't even getting their first period till about 16 and a half. And what do the ancients say? Well, for example, a lot of the ancient writers said that a girl is not ready to be married until she has her first period or after.
That's
so
because they were liberal secular humanists. That's why
they were liberals. Mm-hmm. Yes. They had not experienced the wisdom of Muhammad yet, who knew that it was 9. But if you look at like Macrobius, Hippocratic writers, they were all saying, you cannot have a girl in marriage or bearing children until she reaches menarche, has her first period. When was that happening? Around 16 and a half. So, and then that's when they would just start looking. Again, we see that girls were still not even marrying until around 20, late teens. So they have their first period when? Around 16 and a half. Then the family starts looking, and they're probably not even married till when? Around 18 or even later. So Daniel's, again, is just getting the history wrong. He's getting the science wrong. And this was already pointed out to him in my debate with him. Other people have pointed out this, but he keeps lying because he is the defender of pedophiles at the expense of the suffering of women.
Yes.
Young girls.
Yes.
Yeah, and the overarching goal, of course, is to defend his prophet who had sex with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl. But also think about the constant straw manning here. He'll talk about child marriage, and then he'll specify, I prefer minor marriage. And then what does he start criticizing? Well, the age of 18 versus, 17 and a half. Well, I mean, think about this. Why are they glued to the age of 18? Guys, when we're criticizing child marriage in Islam, what are we actually criticizing? Are we criticizing them for not waiting until 18? No, we're talking about marrying. We're talking about 9 and 10 and 8 and 5-year-old girls, which is what these guys do because of their prophet. So Daniel, in case you're too stupid to hear this the 700 times we said it. If you wanted to make a debate about 18 versus 17 or something, you could do that. You'd go to the scientific research and decide what is best. That's not what we're criticizing Muhammad over. We're not criticizing him for being with a 17-year-old as opposed to waiting until the age of 18. We're not saying, oh, here's the age of consent in this state, and that's what we're going to stick to. It's not what we're doing here. It's your prophet climbing on top of a prepubescent 9-year-old girl, and your book allowing, Surah 65, verse 4, men, grown men, even old men, to marry, have sex with, divorce, and pass on prepubescent girls. That's our main criticism. And what happens when we bring up the main criticism? He says, oh, this age of 18 is arbitrary. That's a straw man, Daniel. That's a straw, not that you care, because we know your followers don't care.
And also, the age of 18 isn't arbitrary. It's been decided, as AP said, through years of study, experience. We've realized that puberty is complete in girls between 15 and 17. As a society, what makes sense? Well, the following year, because we can't give every girl a medical exam, the following year, 18, you should be granted the status of adulthood. And we'll get into later, research shows that you're more likely to have a horrible marriage or end in divorce if you're getting married before 18. So Daniel's got this dilemma. He wants societies with low divorce, but he also wants child marriage. Child marriage leads to higher divorce rates. So which is it? He's got that dilemma he can't get out of.
Well, you have to do a proper marriage. If you do child marriage, you have to raise that child properly, and also beat that child whenever the child doesn't obey. So there won't be much of a chance to be independent and get married and divorce and all that. Yeah.
Right, keep them
guys.
down. That's what Islam does.
Yeah, guys. So understand the reasoning here. If you're talking about the age at which girls go through puberty and eventually complete puberty and so on, and you get a sort of bell curve type situation and so on. And so when you're thinking about what age you can legally have sex and so on, you're looking at that and going, okay, well, here's the age at which things are generally very safe for girls. This is when they're generally very safe. So let's put it somewhere there. Daniel isn't saying go a year earlier or something like that. He's not saying go a year. He's not saying go a year earlier. He's saying you could go massively earlier than the entire bell curve and it doesn't matter. But guess what? This is the problem. He acts like he's defending what we're defending against our criticism, and he's not. It's a straw man. He's straw manning the entire position, just as if we're saying, no, we're glued to the age of 18 as this arbitrary thing that we got from Western liberalism or something like that. We're criticizing your prophet for having sex with a prepubescent girl. Yes, we're saying, hey, it's best to wait to be safe. But as far as the main criticism, you don't act. And Daniel, you compulsive chronic liar, stop acting like all you're saying is that it's okay to have sex with a 16-year-old because a 16-year-old can be developed. That's not what you're saying. You're saying you could have sex with a 6-year-old. That's what you're saying. And that if she's chubby enough that where you're not going to break her in half, then you could go ahead and climb between her legs, even if she's never reached puberty. That's what you're saying. So start defending what you're actually claiming.
Yeah. David is so mad because Muhammad didn't wait till Aisha was 18 years old, you see.
Yeah, you see it. This is what David's mad about.
I have a deductive argument presented proving you can grape a child bride in Islam. Can I email it to David or IP? Love IP and David, and AP is Matt.
I don't want to hear more about I don't want to hear more about child marriage. I'm so glad you're not sending it to me.
Yeah, you can try to email it to me. If I get time, I'll go through it. So yeah, that's fine. 1 Thessalonians 4:13-17. Does Paul think this is in his time? No, I don't think that's necessarily reading of the text. Check out Bram Rawlings' interview on Exploring Reality. He covers that and a bunch of other passages in Paul and makes a good case that no, that's not what's going on there. Hey, Michael, nice of you to come online at a normal point of time for us to cross the pond. Yeah, that's why I did it earlier. I had a bunch of patrons asked me to stream a little earlier for people in Europe. So 2 hours before those others
bums who won't stay up.
2 hours before those other two people on your stream that I don't know. Here's some Scandinavian shekels. If you have any questions, ask your guests. Appreciate the Scandinavian shekels. I'm happy to stream early.
See how Europeans act like they control the entire world? It's disgusting.
Yeah. Monkey Mike is on our channel on our live streams every time, by the way.
Yeah. Sorry for the confusion. CF Church Fathers. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, Church Fathers were very monarchical Trinitarian. That's one of the reasons I am a monarchical Trinitarian. It's very much present in the early Church Fathers. Just read Irenaeus. Just read Justin Martyr. You get the idea of the monarchy of the Father very clearly. So yeah, and again, this is Sijuwati talks about this in some of his research. Daniel peeks at you. Police be upon him. Still hiding his hands. Oh, remember AP? Remember he was hiding his hands in your debate. Remember that? He said in your debate, there's no proof you could use those tunnels for sex trafficking. So there was no proof he was not using his hands on himself the whole time.
Oh,
Things
yes.
he
That's
never
right.
showed them. So
I
proof.
forgot about that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We need a poll for the best beard. No, we don't. I would win immediately. Mine is the most trimmed and elegant here. I mean, just look, it's just clearly
That's
the
true.
best.
Mine is just let go. And, yeah.
Take this and refute more blasphemy of the blasphemers. Appreciate. Thanks, IP. Muhammad waited 3 years. Yeah, because Aisha's mother was shoveling food into her to fatten her up. They tend not to mention that part. What do you say about that, David? Is that
That's true.
No.
That's in the sources that her mom was trying to fatten her up. And remember, I mentioned that a concern that you do have among the schools of Islamic jurisprudence is for the girl to not be frail so that you're going to break her when a grown man climbs on top of her. And so they were concerned about fattening girls up and so on. So yeah, so you have the idea that her mom would want to fatten her up. You also have the flight from Mecca to Medina during this time. So there was a big thing going. And when they get to Medina, Aisha gets sick and all her hair falls out and they wait for her hair to grow back. So you put all that together. The point is that you have your lots of Muslims who, once they find out Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl, they're looking for some sort of justification. They say, oh, married at 6, had sex at 9. He was waiting for something. What was he waiting for? What was he waiting for? And they say, puberty. So she must have reached puberty. Wrong. The sources say she hadn't reached puberty. So he's waiting for something else. What's he waiting for? Well, it doesn't specifically say, but you do have the passages about Aisha's mom fattening her up for the marriage. You have the passages about the flight to Medina, and you got the passages saying she got sick and all her hair fell out, and they're waiting for her hair to grow back. And so he wasn't waiting for puberty, guys. Give that up.
Just wanted to support your ministry. IP, keep defending the faith. I will. Appreciate it. I honestly have no sympathy for people that fall for dawah in 2024. All you have to do is read. Yeah, I am going to respond to some TikTok stuff. And the dawah on TikTok is pretty stupid. It's some of the dumbest stuff I've seen. Like I had to respond to a Muslim, and I'm going to respond to him again, where he put the text on the screen and didn't even read it. And he just did it again. It's like they don't care. They just make things up. And their audience never even calls them out on it. Like, you can see the text on the screen in front of them, and their audience doesn't care. Like, it's all about lies and deception.
This is so Islamophobic. We know for a fact that dawah is the bacon of intellectual advancement.
I love the bacon. That's a good one.
Why would you call it bacon, AP? That's messed up.
Daniel's name rhymes with Pikachu. What?
Oh, I just wanted to point out, because AP and I have pointed this out a bunch. I've said that the leader of a community or some person with influence over a community, he influences that community, but the community influences him in return, right?
Yeah.
Because you find out what's acceptable from your community. I think the first time I mentioned this was in the context of Andrew Tate. How does this guy lie so freely, right? Like, how does he sit there and say, oh, I never said that. I never did that. That was all years ago. And like, we've got clips of him like from a couple years ago saying all this stuff, and that it was still going on. How can he? And then I never sold drugs. One of the things I never done is sell drugs. And then there's all these clips of him talking about selling drugs. And it's like, how do you not spot that? How does he think he can get away with this stuff? And the reason is, if you actually condition a community with cult-like features to where they will not question you, and you could tell them something one day and tell them the exact opposite the next day, and they'll just keep accepting it no matter how many times you lie, that conditions you in return. So you've conditioned the community to accept anything you say, even if you contradict what you said the day before. But them accepting it conditions you to think you can get away with it. And you'll go further and further and further with this, because you've conditioned them to never question you. And you realize your community will never question you. Therefore, you can just lie all you want. And they absolutely love it. Well, it's the same thing in dawah. You condition the community. You condition the community to mindlessly accept anything you say. And if they question anything you say, oh, what are you? Are you actually a kafir? Are you actually one of the Jews or Christians? You're not really a Muslim. And you condition that like that. And you end up with an entire community that will never question anything you say, no matter how obvious it is that you're lying. And once you've got a community like that, that conditions you to just lie more and more and more, because your community just loves it and they will never question it. And so you end up with a situation where it's on TikTok and people can put sources on the screen that say the exact opposite of what they're claiming. Your community's not gonna ever spot it. And you never have to spot it because it's irrelevant. As long as you're saying something, as long as you're saying the source says this, it doesn't matter if no one actually reads it or that no one, it doesn't, it's completely irrelevant. They will mindlessly agree with you. And so this is the result.
Daniel's name rhymes with Pikachu, but he looks like a Snorlax.
That makes sense.
Looking up a Snorlax.
That's so a big, giant sleeping Pokemon.
Yeah.
Oh.
Daniel's logic. LGBTQ.
There is a bit of resemblance. There is a resemblance.
No comment. Daniel's logic. LGBTQ people have premarital relations. Therefore, you either support LGBTQ marriage or you support debauchery.
I was just thinking something along those lines when I heard him again with that reasoning. I thought, okay, if it is the case that some children, minors early on start being very sexually active, therefore we should somehow encourage to marry them, to older people. Does it also mean that you should encourage, I don't know, people who are attracted to the same sex to go ahead and quickly get a partner from the same sex because they are inevitably constantly attracted to those? So
yeah,
probably.
If you have desire, I guess you got to act on it because that's their logic for child marriage. The
that's
moment
fantastic.
this
was perfect for Pride Month. Yeah, wonderful.
It's not
Daniel's
Pride Month anymore. It's not Pride Month anymore. It's straight boy July.
Stop lying about Pride Month.
It's not Pride Month anymore. It's straight boy July. Didn't you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
All right, let's play some more.
Historically, religions and cultures, they defined adulthood at puberty. And this is why when you look at
monarchy, not puberty,
marriage practices, not only of Muslims, but of Christians, Jews, Hindus, and Chinese, etc., is based on puberty. And you have this minor marriage, meaning under 18. So in some places,
you hear it? You hear it? He keeps doing it. He can't stop doing it.
Straw man.
Our main criticism. So it seems like we are in agreement that some late teens age is a good some sort of benchmark there. But when we're talking about child marriage in Islam, this is why he goes to minor marriage, right? This is why he says minor marriage, because now he knows we're thinking in terms of anyone before 18 is a minor. And then he's going to respond to that. But what's the real harm? What if a girl was 17 years, 364 days? Does that extra day somehow change her? No. And people go, you're right. It does. What is that extra day going to do? You're right. It's not this big change. Daniel, the main criticism is that you're not waiting until 17. You're not waiting till 16. You're not waiting till 15. You're not even waiting for 10, Daniel. You're not even waiting for double digits, dude. You think it's okay to have sex with a 5-year-old? You, Daniel Haqiqatjou, you believe that it is okay for a 50-some-year-old man to have sex with a 5-year-old? That's our problem. This is all. It's all smoke. It's all smoke and mirrors.
David, remember we watched a video of him recently where he was speaking at this at some college, Queen's College, I believe, and he was talking about the Holocaust denial, right? And what he said there, in order to parody Holocaust denial, because he wants to deny the Holocaust because he's such a fan of that, he was making this strum, and he was like saying, and they're saying you can't question it, and you have to say 6 million Jews were killed. If you say 5,999,999, that is not acceptable. This is very similar to that. Nobody ever said such a thing. That is a straw man. That is nonsense. He's doing something similar here again. Yeah.
Average age that girls are getting married is 14 or 15. Getting married as young as 8 or 9 years old. So this is something that has been practiced, and the only reason that we have
it's completely false that it's just a normal thing. Girls were getting married 8 or 9 years old. I mean, Michael Satlow, Brent Shaw, others have just said there's no evidence for that. That would be exceptionally rare. And when it did happen in terms of like royalties being married, Kim Phillips points out they also put in like stipulations that this marriage cannot be consummated until like after 16 or 18. So like the king of
Yep.
Argon said something like that. Phillips talks about in this book. So he's just completely misrepresenting the history here. It wasn't this ancient practice that not 8 and 9-year-olds were being married. Muhammad's marriage to Aisha was outside of the norm for the way the ancient world functioned. That wasn't normal. And Muslims like to pretend it is, even though it wasn't. The average age girls were marrying in the ancient world was around 18. Okay. And again, I cited numerous studies to show this.
And his source is, trust me, bro. He'll just make it sound like everyone was marrying kids back then. And as you pointed out, because this comes up over and over again, it's now standard whenever you bring up Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. They'll bring up Queen Isabella. They'll say, look, Queen Isabella was married when she was 6. And they'll actually link to an article and will not read the article because the article goes on to say that the marriage was never consummated because she was so much younger than the guy. It was a political arranged marriage and the marriage was never consummated. It's like, wait a minute, in your guys' mind, even if you go with this, even if you go with the idea that they're marrying children, they're not having sex with them. They refuse. They understand. These guys understand. Wait a minute. I'm an adult. This is a little girl. We're not having sex. We have to have the arranged marriage to unite these families for this political thing. But there's no set of circumstances where I'm having sex with this girl. Absolutely. And they're using that as a justification for Muhammad when he was 54 years old, climbing on top of a prepubescent 9-year-old girl. That's why I say it's all distraction and deflection and smoke and mirrors. They're not answering the actual issue. Daniel, why do you think it's perfectly acceptable for a girl to be penetrated, a 5-year-old girl to be penetrated by a man who's old enough to be her great grandfather?
It's disgusting.
That's the question. Quit deflect. Oh, but 17 isn't really different from 18. 9 is, isn't it?
Yeah. And Kim will actually push back on him. She actually starts to push back.
We have a problem with it. It's happening. Like 8 and 9-year-olds. Like I went to public school in Houston, and in elementary school, some of the kids were sexually active.
Every 8-year-old was banging everyone every day. It was happening. Every single 8-year-old. There were just orgies of 8-year-olds every day, and I thought, Alhamdulillah, we should all get married.
Yeah, and again, I cited sources earlier that say that's just not the case. Like, again, it's like 1% of 12-year-olds have had sex between the ages of between the years of 2006 and 2010, according to the National Survey of Family Growth. He's just completely misrepresenting the American landscape.
Not at my school. Every 8-year-old was banging 24/7, man. We go into school, we just jump in the locker room, bang, bang, bang. We go in the closet, bang, bang, bang. What's happening? I thought, wow, this is why we need to marry little kids.
He also argues or believes or claims that that because Christians don't observe the Muslim rituals of going to the bathroom, going to the toilet, it's obviously the fact that Christians are peeing all over the walls everywhere and all that.
Yeah, remember he said this. Christians pee all over the walls.
That's what he sees. That's how he sees society. You know, he probably doesn't get out of the house much, and he thinks, oh, we have to stay indoors. Our kids have to stay here because if they go to school, then they won't walk. They won't be able to walk past all those other children that will be having group sex everywhere. Like,
maybe he's just like projecting his own problems onto children. Like maybe he's the one who shouldn't go outside because he can't control himself.
Sexually active, you know, and the response from the school system is say, oh, as long as you're having safe sex, you know, you have to have safe sex, and they're not even trying to discourage
about 8 and 9-year-olds. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that young. I mean,
look, the
average.
Grew up in a rough part of Houston, but
I guess so. I mean,
dude,
I definitely
8. You're talking 3rd grade, dude. You're talking 3rd grade. Where? Tell us where this school is, Dan. And this is. Has this guy ever said 2 sentences where he didn't at some point in those 2 sentences just make something up or lie?
What is happening?
You're talking 3rd grade. He's talking like sex is rampant among 3rd graders in 3rd grade.
What is happening?
I was playing with Transformers. Yeah,
my daughter is 8.
What?
She's not even on her mind. She doesn't even know what it is. Like this just doesn't. It's not happening. He's a liar. Like he's and again, the statistics.
Look at that smile on his face, you freaking creep.
I'm thinking about them right now.
That's a face of a pedophile. That's a face of a pedophile trying to justify pedophilia to make it acceptable, so he can do it openly and not behind closed doors.
Definitely think that that puberty, I mean, I understand and I agree that the age of adulthood is arbitrary. You say artificial, I kind of say arbitrary. Like it's society kind of will determine. We've put it at 18. Many of us think it should be older.
What's that?
Kim is an idiot. She is
an
absolute idiot. I had no idea who she was before October 7, before the Hamas attack on Israel. After October 7, she started following me and responding to things I say. And it's incredible how bad some people are at understanding and absorbing basic information and knowledge. I've interacted with her many, many times. She is just unable to ever properly understand what is being said and to make arguments or understand arguments. So of course she immediately absorbed the dumbest thing that he said and just repeated it.
Yeah, it's not arbitrary. It's based on medical research that's the best age that we can declare adulthood. It's, as we've demonstrated earlier in the stream.
And in defense, the only way you could say that is you could say there's some degree. If you modified the criteria a little bit, like you could say 18 and a half is ideal or something like that. Or you could say 17 and a half is okay. You're talking about here's all the data of all the health problems and so on that arise when girls are too young, before their bodies have completely matured. And so you're trying to catch the end of that, to where most girls, the vast majority of girls, are okay and it's not going to harm them. And so that's not arbitrary. What's arbitrary, if you wanted to say it, is you could shift that a little in either direction or something like that. But with Islam, we're talking about like massive shifts to where you're even going back before the girls have ever reached puberty. That's insane. So explain that, Daniel. Explain why you're going totally before the girls have ever reached puberty. Talking about 5-year-olds and so on, 4-year-olds. Yeah. That's the issue.
Many of us think it should be.
Stop acting like it's where it's what if we shifted it by 5 days? It's just arbitrary.
But David, 18 is just a very arbitrary age, David. Stop saying 18.
And as R. Kelly said, age ain't nothing but a number.
Many of us think it should be older. At this point, I look at kids that are like 22 and I'm like, you are still stupid and young and you should not be an adult. But yeah, certain, and the time has changed. There was back in in my grandfather's time, at 16 years old, the kids had to take charge of the family and start providing for their families. So why couldn't they be adults at 16 if they're running the entire family farm because their dad was killed, right? Or something happened in a war, or they're being sent off to war at 16 years old, and yet they're not considered adults. So I understand that this is arbitrary. I do agree that I've had, I'm going to say something controversial, so you won't be the only one. I've always felt like the term pedophilia should only be for prepubescent. Like you're a pedophile if you are going after prepubescent children, because that's a different.
That's technically what it means. I mean, if you're attracted to someone,
that's why we call Muhammad a pedophile. That's why we call Muhammad a pedophile.
Daniel is so happy to hear that. He's like, yes, finally.
I mean, like, we use pedophile in a colloquial sense to refer to anyone going after a child, but technically someone who's attracted to like someone who's like just started puberty or is only a few years past is like a hebephile. That's hebephilia is what it's technically called. So like she's just not understanding the technical versus the colloquial sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm looking around. I have the DSM around here, which gives the latest definition of pedophilic disorder. I have it around here somewhere. I might jump up and look for it just so we can be completely accurate. But I remember, So you're talking about girls who are young, and it will also qualify it and say, and the guy has to, or the other person has to be at least 5 years older. So in other words, you don't want to say that a 9-year-old who's attracted to another 9-year-old is a pedophile or something like that. You're talking about someone who's older. And so you have that. And then you have the qualifiers. One, there is an incestuous type pedophilia where you're attracted to young family members. So that is a specific type. And then you have the exclusive versus non-exclusive type. So some people are exclusively attracted to children and others are not exclusively attracted to children. They're attracted to grown women and they're attracted to little girls. So Muhammad, based on the definitions that are used today, would be a non-exclusive type pedophile.
Yes.
According to the DSM-5, that's the manual on mental health disorders.
Precisely.
Once somebody has gone through puberty, it is harder to know how old they actually are, right? A girl that is 15 could look like she's 22. And so that's difficult. And I can't say a guy is a pedophile for being attracted to a 15-year-old when the 15-year-old looks 22 years old. When you stand her next to a 22-year-old and he's attracted to both of them and they both look exactly the same, how can I then say, well, you're just a pedophile simply because this one happens to be 15 years old? To me, it's a very distinct sexual lust that is after a distinct sexual, proclivity, right? Which is for young prepubescents. So I can understand this.
What's that?
Hey,
I said, what a story, Mark. Here's the thing. This is a very stupid conversation. They're talking about something that is completely irrelevant and that doesn't at all matter to the subject at hand. Daniel Haqiqatjou defends having relationships, so having marriages and sex, meaning consummation, with children as soon as they show signs of puberty. That's what he said. That's what he believes in.
Well,
none of the whole what is pedophilia and what is not actually matters to the conversation.
Well, also, they're talking about child marriage, not just being attracted to a 15-year-old.
Yeah,
if you think you want to have a marriage with a 15-year-old whose brain isn't developed, there's something wrong with you, Nick Fuentes. There's something wrong if you think it's okay when you're like 30 or something to marry a 15 or 16-year-old. You don't want a partner, someone who's mentally developed. Oh, definitely. Oh, well, that might be okay. As Muhammad said, it was okay. But you don't want someone who's mentally developed. You want someone you can control and manipulate. That's what that's after. So again, this is in the context of child marriage. It's different than just being attracted to like a 15 or 16-year-old. If you want to actively marry someone there's something wrong with you because you don't want someone whose brain is developed. You're looking for someone to control and manipulate. That's one of the other problems of child marriage.
Yeah, and by the way, I haven't seen this clip. Apart from what we've seen right here, I haven't seen this, but I'm guessing. So keep in mind what's going on through Daniel Haqiqatjou's mind right now. She's saying, yeah, I can understand being attracted to a 15-year-old. I mean, a 15-year-old might look just like a 20-year-old. So yeah, I can get that. And yeah, I would just say pedophilia, talking about pedophilia, that's for younger girls and so on. Does Daniel know that's exactly what we're talking about in our criticisms of Muhammad, that he's talking about having sex? Yes, he knows that. I'm guessing he's just going to go on, agreeing with her and proceeding as if they're talking about 15, 16-year-olds and stuff like that.
Yes,
that's what I would guess.
He's
looking for atmospheres of ignorance.
We're about to get to one of the stupidest things he says, I think, in about a minute here or so.
Yes, and I agree with that. But most girls and boys, I think, start the puberty process, I would say at like 12 years old. And they kind of finish it.
Correct.
Maybe around 16.
Biologically, there's different stages of puberty. And for girls, there's like 5 stages. And having the period is like the 4th stage. It's like almost the last stage. So having the period is not the beginning of puberty. It's actually towards the end. And the average is 12 years old when they have that period, or 12 or 13.
Right.
But the other.
Notice he kind of contradicted himself because he's saying the average girls are having their period is 12. But earlier he said that 4% of girls complete puberty by age 9. So like, what? There's no research that would support that. He's now contradicting stuff he said earlier, because there's no way, if the average amount of girls are having the age of menarche at 12, there's no way girls are completed puberty by age 9. So he's saying whatever he can whenever he wants to just sort of deceive and lie. Like he'll say that earlier, but this is clearly contradicting stuff he said earlier.
Other aspects of puberty, like the hormones, the secondary sex characteristics, the lust or desire, that starts well before the period. for girls?
I don't know. I would say 12. Girls still look like little girls, and then they have their period, and then they start developing hips. And you need those hips
pause it,
if you're going to make
pause
the.
it.
If,
Mhm.
By the way, that's very interesting because Mike, in the Bible, when Jesus says little girl, arise, it says, and she was 12 years old. And so she's
Yeah.
saying, she just said, I don't know, I think 12 that's when you still look like little girls. And it's at some point after that where you start looking like grown women. Keep in mind, guys, keep in mind, Daniel Haqiqatjou he defends sex with 5-year-olds. You could be 5. You could be 4.
Yes.
Precocious puberty. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
And also
So-
in that day and age when Jesus was talking, the average age of menarche was around 16. So this was still a girl who hadn't had her period. That's just probably the case based on statistics.
Yeah, so here you have Daniel Haqiqatjou, and this discussion, she apparently thinks that he's talking about, 15-year-old girls and stuff like that. No, that's a deflection. What Daniel actually believes is way more disgusting than what she thinks he's saying. And as disgusting as what Daniel thinks is, he's still way better than his God and his prophet.
Mm-hmm.
This is wild stuff.
if you're going to make the argument that a girl can marry at puberty, and because then you would have to make the argument that she
He
could then
doesn't
be
believe that.
childbearing.
Pause
I
it,
would
pause
say
it,
that
pause
the
it. I'll
period.
be quick.
Yeah.
She's saying if you're making the claim that a girl can marry at puberty, Daniel believes you can marry at any age.
Yeah.
He would say you wait for some signs of maturity, completely unfounded in his sources. But even there, you can marry her at any age. You would wait for some sort of signs of maturity, namely that you've started the process of puberty. And again, his book doesn't require even that.
Would have to make the argument that she could then be childbearing. I would say that the period is not the indicator of being ready, but it's the hips and whether or not the hips have fully formed, because she's got to be able to push
Smart.
out a giant
Well, wait until you hear what Daniel says here. It's one of the dumbest things you'll ever hear.
baby.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to do that without destroying her body, then you've got to ensure that those hips are fully formed. And that doesn't happen until well after the period starts at 12 years old.
From the biology, because I had a whole debate about this. The hips actually do
When you
form,
got crushed.
before the period. They fill out in terms of fat, but in terms of bone structure, they do form before the period. It's because the puberty.
Okay, he is just flat out wrong here. He says the hips form before the period. And I can show you this. I'm going to actually, here's what I'll do. I will show you how he is wrong using a source he has cited. So let's just go to YouTube. You can watch me do this in real time. So here we are.
It's
on
messed
YouTube.
up. I thought you were about to pull up a model or something like this. And look, here's a model of the female hips or something.
No, let's go to his page. So we'll go to his channel here. So we'll go to Muslim Skeptic. Let's click on that. Let's go to lives. So these are lives that him and I went back and forth on about a year ago or so, right after the debate. So he did 2 lives. I did 2 live replies because I wasn't letting him get away with his nonsense. So we go to, I believe, the first live stream. Yes, this one here. It's about 5 hours long. Okay. I'm going to stop. I don't want to hear his nonsense. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to click on the second link right there. Everyone see that? Okay. He's going to pull this up. All right. So it opened up another thing. Let me pull that one up because it opened up a whole other tab for me. Where is it? Right here. Okay. So here it is. Growth of the birth canal in adolescent girls. Now it's behind a paywall, but you're in luck because I actually have that study. I wanted to show you that I have it just so you can see the title. Growth of the birth canal from 1982. Size of the birth canal is smaller the first 3 years past menarche than the age of 18. And they have a nice little handy chart in this. Okay. What does it say? This is the growth of the pelvis, the birth canal. There's age at menarche around age 13.
Yeah.
And as you can see, hip development is still going much past it. When does it get complete? Between the ages of 15 and 17. So Daniel was just flat out lying for him to say hips are developed before the period.
This is an Islamophobic study.
It's a study
if he were to speak, he cited this as evidence for what he's claiming in a different discussion. He's talking to Kim Iversen, and he says that nope, the hips have widened. If he had said the hips start to widen, or the birth canal starts to widen, it begins by the time a girl has gotten her first period. That would be one thing, but look at that. It keeps developing. And when is it completed? Around 16 to 17. That's when most girls, they have the hips of an adult woman. Why do we wait until 18? Why is that a good idea? Because that's when the overwhelming majority of girls have hips that are wide enough to have a baby. My goodness. Again, what claim does this guy make that is actually correct? What study? Can you think of any study he has actually quoted accurately? I can't. I've never seen him quote something accurately.
Yeah. And you might think, well, maybe it's just a little extra hip development after that. It's not that big of a deal. No, as we pointed out in our replies to him and my debate, when you have child marriage, it's associated with all these harmful things. Numerous studies show this, but like for example, we see the mental health issues, psychological issues, higher rates of suicide, these kinds of things as well. So we have reproductive issues, sexual and physical violence as well. Younger mothers were reported to be 2 to 5 times more likely of risk of maternal mortality compared to adult mothers. So they don't even raise, all these issues are happening when it comes to child marriage. I pointed all this out to him in the debate with him. However, there's another issue. Okay, so what if you're going to say, well, like maybe, it's just a little bit of hip development there. It's not that big of a deal. We could, maybe it's not. Well, there's actual research that shows that it's
just
big deal.
The hip.
Yeah. This study, maternal prenatal morbidity and mortality associated with adolescent pregnancies in Latin America. So what this study basically shows is that if you have a child before the age for 15 and younger, the odds of maternal death are 4 times more likely than someone who's 16 or older. And you can see right down there at the bottom of the chart, maternal death, 18 and a half if you're 15 and younger versus 4. So it's more. So you can see, quite frankly, for 16 to 17, 18 to 19, for some, it's even more than 4 times more likely. But on average, 4 times more likely you're going to wind up dead if you don't wait for your hips to develop to have a child. So it is a big deal to wait for hips to be developed, which happens roughly between the ages of 15 and 17. If you have a child before that, if you're a girl and you have a child before that, you're 4 times more likely to die trying to bear a child than after when you wait for your hips to develop. So this is a big deal. Daniel is lying, and it's going to lead to his followers, gullible followers, following this nonsense, maybe even acting on it, and possibly causing a girl to die because Daniel told them it's okay. Hips develop before the period. It's just fat after that. So this is what I mean about his lies leading to absolute harm and chaos. Like, does he even care about girls? He doesn't follow the science. I doubt he does.
He doesn't care.
He follows it's basically trust me, bro, and then he'll name a bunch of studies that don't actually support what he says. But he knows, like people like Kim Iversen, and he knows his listeners have never studied any of this stuff. So he knows people are going to fall for it, even though what Kim is saying is correct. She's saying, wait a minute, 12-year-old, still a little girl. And I think, hey, hips widening and stuff, that takes a while and so on. But she's just going on with like life experience and her familiarity with life. And he's, but studies have shown, and he's making stuff up. But so guys, you have these different perspectives. So you have the actual perspective of Islam, which is you're not waiting for anything. You're not waiting, according to the Quran and the Hadith, you're not waiting for anything. Nothing. It doesn't matter. If she's 5, it doesn't matter. You can have sex with a 5-year-old. You have to marry her. You marry a 5-year-old, have sex with her, divorce her, pass her on to the next guy. It's totally fine. A girl by the age of 7 or 8 could have 5 different husbands. That's perfectly acceptable in the Muslim sources. You're not waiting for anything. You're not waiting for any signs of maturity. Then you have Daniel's perspective as, no, you should wait a little bit longer until there's some sort of signs of maturity, meaning a girl has started the process of puberty, started the process. You're not waiting. You're not waiting for a period. You're not waiting for the hips to widen. You're not waiting for any of that stuff. And that's totally fine. And then you have people like us who are saying, okay, here's all this medical data about all the harms if you do not wait until girls have their bodies have developed. Yeah. And that's the worst position. That's the worst position according to Daniel Haqiqatjou. Why? Because in my third grade, everyone was banging everyone else. Trust me, bro. It was happening. So therefore, we need to get married.
I was watching. Yeah.
And even if the girl doesn't die, they have a higher rate of developing a fistula from trying to bear a child as a teenager. So like
and you have the problems with the babies as well.
Yeah, there's so many problems: mental, physical, raising children, having children born with low birth weight or other complications. There's so many reasons to wait until when they're actually an adult. Daniel ignores all of this, even though I pointed out this to him in the debate, because he's got an agenda and he's going to lie.
Uh-oh. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Now we can plug our own channels here. His IP is dipped out. Didn't this happen once before? Was that on his channel?
Yes. He kicked himself out again.
Where we took over? Welcome to the David and AP show. TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world.
I hear it. I don't know. But yeah. All right.
Well, it was good while it lasted.
Anyway. I was quick. I'm on top of it. All right. I wanted to get to some more super chats here before we move on. Thank you. Momo is disgusting. Police be upon him. Yes, he is. If you repeat a lie often enough, eventually people will believe it. Joseph Goebbels. Yep. It's a good point there.
Did you just say Goebbels?
Yeah, Joseph Goebbels. Isn't that how you say it? Was it Goebbels? I don't know.
It's Goebbels. Yeah.
Goebbels. Oh, okay. One of the risks of opposing Islam is...
Hey, make sure you pronounce Nazi names correctly around AP. He loses his mind. Wrong. How dare you?
One of the risks of opposing Islam is that it leaves one vulnerable to becoming a neocon, especially true when the war on terror was at its peak. Yeah, that is an interesting point there. Yeah. Isn't there evidence to suggest that people who marry in their late 20s, early 30s have the lowest divorce rates? Isn't that basically what we've been told? Yeah, I got a slide I can actually put up and show you. The lowest divorce rates definitely are best seen in this. Here's the bell curve here. So lower rates of divorce happen roughly between the ages of 25 and 30. After 30, you see it starts to go back up, but you see very high divorce rates in the years of teen, between the years of 10 and 20. So the best time to get married is going to be in your late 20s. That's just generally what the research shows.
By the way, think about why that would be. If you're in some culture that allows you to marry a 10-year-old, you're probably a person who's attracted to 10-year-olds. And so what happens when the girl goes through puberty and she's fully developed? Well, you're gonna divorce her and trade her in for another 10-year-old.
Beast.
Yeah, Islam enables pedophiles. Yeah. When it comes to jokes, what kind of jokes could be considered sacrilegious? Is there a general rule of thumb about jokes about Christ? I would say if something is considered sacred, probably don't joke about it. Like the Eucharist, for example, Jesus, Mary, I would say, the Holy Trinity, for example, that kind of stuff. Also, it depends on what kind of joke you're making. If you're going to make something sexual, that's obviously problematic. I think dad jokes are probably going to be fine, depending on how they're used. You got to take it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. Whatever you do, just don't listen to AP when it comes to that. Three Musketeers are back. Let's go, says Kieran. A salami bacon to you all. Three final prophets. Salad be upon you. How much would do what would do if do this is I'm that whatever that he said that
if they would could do nice.
That's a good one.
Nice. Thank you, Ellie, for the extremely generous super chat. Love you all. Miss you, Mike. Yeah, miss you too, Ellie. Hopefully we can hang out again when I come back to your area. I should be back in, I think, February.
And so we shall.
Conference. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, we should do some more stuff down there. That'd be awesome to do stuff down there. I like going there. You guys make good points, but I saw an interview with a medical doctor proving it was okay, and she was mature, so no need to worry, says Sheikh Mike Wingeling. Peace be upon him.
Yep, you see the wingelings. You see the wingelings.
Powerful.
Got him. Off topic, but I have been seeing shorts recently on Muslims talking about Christian priests back in the day believing Muhammad was a prophet. Thoughts, I have not seen anything on this at all. I mean, you could have some strange priest or monk in that time period claiming he might be. The majority church position, though, like if you read throughout the Middle Ages, is not that Islam was a separate religion, but that it was Christian heresy.
Yeah.
So you could have some priests believing that maybe Muhammad was a prophet and people corrupted it, because they didn't ever think of Islam as another religion. They looked at it as a heresy, some sort of Christian heresy. This is like in the opening lines of like the Augsburg Confession, for example.
Yeah, and when this gets brought up, it's two things that come to mind. One, if you don't know much about what Muhammad taught, and all you heard was, hey, there's this guy who came out of Arabia and he says he's a prophet, and he's affirming that Jesus is born of a virgin and that he performed miracles and that he's the Messiah. You might say, oh, that sounds like a decent guy. Maybe he's a good guy down there sent to the Arabs. It's when you find out more about what he taught, they're like, oh, this guy's completely wrong. So that's one thing. Like, how much do people actually know when they're confirming him? Because I could totally see someone in 7th century Arabia, you hear about Muhammad preaching monotheism and affirming Jesus is the Messiah, and thinking, oh wow, gosh, it's cool if God sent a prophet to these people or something like that. I could totally see that. But two, if you're talking about someone who actually knows about Muhammad and has studied the life of Muhammad, if you were a priest and you said, yeah, this guy's a true prophet, okay, I don't care what you say. What are your reasons for maintaining he's a prophet? This is I've never seen people who do this so frequently, but just, look, this person said this, therefore you have to believe it. Well, can we look at the person's reasons, his arguments? Because otherwise it's an irrelevant appeal to authority. It's an irrelevant appeal to authority. If you do not have good arguments for what you're saying, and I'm appealing to you as an authority, and you have no good arguments for what you're saying, it's an irrelevant appeal to authority. So, but anyway, you don't find a lot of dawah arguments that aren't based on some sort of fallacy.
Yeah, an early example is Saint John of Damascus in his writings. He has on heresies. There, among heresies, which mentions a lot of Christian heresies, the Ishmaelites are mentioned, which are the Muslims. So that's what he calls them, and then he critiques them thoroughly, and talks about Muhammad's wickedness and all that. So that's how they viewed it. However, aside from that, if you see a video online from a Muslim apologist, you could generally assume that everything it says is totally true.
Oh, yes, for sure. Absolutely. Even when the text on the screen contradicts them, which happens sometimes.
Absolutely.
All right, let's play a little bit more here.
The stages begin, like the period, as I mentioned, is the penultimate, the fourth stage.
I think we can see a difference between a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old girl. I mean, their hips are different.
No, I see no difference at all.
Yeah, here's Daniel about to lie.
And because they grow in size, but in terms of the width of the hip and like the proportions, those are set. By the time they have their period, then they're 90% formed. So yeah, there's 10% more. But I mean, those biological facts we can discuss. But
and again, you can see a clear difference in the studies between a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old bearing children. Just the differences in terms of hip development matter when you're pushing out a giant human head. So like that last 10% or more, depending on what study you read, is actually very important. So he's just said, oh, it's just 10%. No, it's actually very important.
But the point is that historically, traditionally, you define adulthood by biology. And this is why, according to canon law, like the minimum age of marriage in the Catholic Church was 12 years old always. And a lot of the church writings or from the church fathers early in Christianity, there were apocryphal gospels that talked about Mary being betrothed to Joseph when she was 12 years old. And that was the Jewish custom. And so she was married at 12. And she wasn't,
Did you see what he just said? He just said she was married at 12. So if you wanted to say, we know where these sources came from and what the status of these sources are. These are extremely late sources that were made specifically to respond to an objection. He says that there are sources, but then he says, so she was married at 12. He states it as a fact. What What a terrible human being. This
and-
on the level of when he said that the Catholic Encyclopedia says she was 12. You go to the Catholic Encyclopedia, it says nothing of the sort. It says we have no idea.
Yeah, he's talking about the Proto-Evangelium of James, which says she was married at 12 to Joseph in order to protect her virginity and assure she would remain a perpetual virgin. He was more like a guardian than an actual husband. Like, this is not comparable at all, because she's supposed to be a perpetual virgin. Making that sort of comparison is ridiculous. And again, the research doesn't support it. We see over and over again this basic idea that no, girls were marrying much later. They were not marrying on average on 12. Michael Satlow puts it roughly between the ages of like mid-teens to like 15 to like early 20s. If you do the average, it's around 18 or so. The Amram Trooper says, again, late teens to early 20s. It's not this idea they were marrying exceptionally early, like Daniel says. And even if he's right, they're still massively better than his prophet, because 12 is better than 9. But again, these sources, the Catholic Encyclopedia, as David said, says they're unreliable. So like, why are you even bringing them up? He's been shown this before and he continues to ignore it. All right, I'm going to put the video back up and let's play a little bit more. And then I think we'll go to some super chats.
Became pregnant before actually cohabiting with Joseph. So cohabitation happened at 16. So between 12 and 16, there was the Immaculate Conception, basically. And so she was a minor, right? So this is when Christians especially like criticize Muslims and they say, you know, you are in support of minor marriage. I point to the fact that, look, you believe that the Virgin Mary was impregnated by God as a minor, you know, under 16 years old.
Did you hear this?
Yeah.
Impregnated as a minor.
Yeah. Oh, it's so stupid. No. Again, a late, unreliable source. We don't have to believe that. And again, there's a huge difference, because Mary is a perpetual virgin. It's God using his omniscience to figure out the right girl to pick, versus Muhammad climbing on top of a 9-year-old. Like, this is not comparable.
And setting the example for all future descendants, and receiving revelations that say any of you can do this with a prepubescent girl.
Disgusting. Oh, that's the wrong thing there. Let me go back to the thing.
Or actually cohabiting with Joseph. So cohabitation happened at 16. So between 12 and 16, there was the Immaculate Conception, basically. And so she was a minor, right? So this is when Christians especially like criticize Muslims and they say, you know, you are in support of minor marriage. I point to the fact that, look, you believe that the Virgin Mary was impregnated.
Hey, pause it.
By God.
Yeah. Look what he just did.
Yeah.
Look at the massive straw man there. Massive straw man.
Mm-hmm. Massive.
We talk about child marriage. Why? Because we're talking about children. We're talking about children. He says, I prefer minor marriage. So minor, what's a minor? Anyone before the age of 18. So if you believe Mary was younger than 18, well, see, we're talking about minor marriage. Again, is that our objection, Daniel?
No.
Is our objection that Aisha was not yet 18 and that Muhammad should have waited until she was 18 years old? Is that our objection?
Totally. That's what we say all the time.
Serious question to Daniel Haqiqatjou fans. When you guys hear us talking, do you think that when we object to Muhammad having sex with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl, do you think we're saying, because this is what Daniel and his followers all seem to think we're saying, this is when we say, guys, Aisha hadn't reached puberty. The Quran doesn't require you to even reach puberty. And you guys are climbing on top of prepubescent 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old girls. We've got a problem here. Look at the massive. There's no medical expert who thinks this is a good idea. This is horribly dangerous. We have endless piles of data. When we say that, do you hear us saying, you know, 18 is the cutoff point. So anything before 18, he didn't wait till 18. That's the problem. Is that what you're hearing? Because it's not what we're saying. We think it's a good idea to have an age like 18 because that's when things are. But guess what? 17 is massively better than 9. 16, massively better than 9. We're talking about a 9-year-old girl, and you keep acting like we're talking about something else. So the question is, why do you do that? Why is everything deception in your responses?
It's all part of the dawah.
And imagine if he were just actually honest right here and explains to her exactly what we're talking about, right? Kim, we're not talking about 17. We don't care about 17. Muslims aren't saying, hey, make it 17. We're not saying, hey, make it 16. We're not saying, hey, make it 15. We're saying, hey, make no restrictions, no restrictions. She could be an 11-month-old baby. It's wild stuff, man. Because he knows that would be massively horrifying to him. He wants it to be appealing in an atmosphere of ignorance.
Yep.
Exactly.
As a minor, under 16 years old. And that's something that they don't really have a response to. But
you hear that, David? We don't have a response to that. We never have responses.
Nobody can respond to this. I don't know. Nobody knows how to respond to this at all. No.
They just lie. Like, he knows we've debunked him on this numerous times, but he's got to keep lying to someone who has not seen him be debunked on this, because he's got nothing else he can do. There's nowhere else he can turn to.
I ask Christians about this all the time. Nobody has responded to me ever on this. Whoa,
hey, this is like Ali Dawa saying, even one Muslim at Speaker's Corner can destroy all the Christians there. We rolled up to Speaker's Corner. Muslims ran. I mean, they scattered. They scattered in fear and terror. It's like they really seem to be of the opinion, as long as you say it and you sound like you really believe it, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you're spouting complete nonsense and lying.
Absolutely.
Like the larger discrepancy, like, okay, gender is something that is male and female based on biology. Childhood and adulthood is also something that's determined by biology, and there's a bell curve. There's a bell curve. Some go through puberty later or earlier, and then there's an average.
So then you would leave it up to who? I mean, the government can't go and like individually assess whether or not the person is finished with puberty before they're. I mean, I guess maybe.
No, but
if
that's
you
actually the case. Like in the U.S., there is no minimum age of marriage in most states. And what the law says is that, okay, if a minor wants to get married, it's through only consent of the parents.
Right.
And sometimes they have to go before a judge. But there are thousands, like in the past decade alone, I think there's over 100,000 minor marriages that take place in the United States.
Look, I'm from Idaho. I went to school with girls that were married while we were still in high school. I mean, once they hit 16, 15 or 16, their parents signed off.
Six. Yeah, six is what he's arguing for.
Do you see this? I mean, guys, how all of you who are watching, how could he make it any more obvious? Minor, he switches it from child marriage, because then we're talking specifically about children, and he knows that that's what we're talking about. That's what Aisha is called in the Muslim sources. She's called prepubescent child. If you look at the passages like Sahih al-Bukhari 5133, it specifically refers to children being married off. This is what we're talking about. He switches it to minor marriage specifically because he knows then I just have to defend, a day before 18. And come on, I mean, what's wrong? I mean, you've had this in the past. They were marrying before 18. What's wrong with Disgusting.
Yeah, and the whole thing about the states is like they always do that at like whataboutism. Well, some states I can say those states are wrong too. I think the legal age of marriage globally should be 18. I do not support anyone getting married before 18. You should wait until 18. That's the bare minimum, because that's when we see, again, that's right after the age girls complete puberty. So we know hips are developed. We know a lot. The brain is developed to a point where they can handle it. And again, what do we see in the research? As I put up earlier, divorce rates are much higher when you're getting married before 18 than after. So Daniel wants to lower divorce. Why does he keep advocating for child marriage? He can't have it both ways.
Off on their marriage to somebody, and yes, their parents had to give consent. Their parents had to allow it. And I did go to school with some. I mean, it was rare, and we did think it was weird culturally, but it's allowed.
16. I think it's a better
practice. She's talking about 16.
16, yeah.
She's talking about 16-year-olds, and she's saying in school, and we thought it was weird when someone would actually use one of these laws and get married off at 16. And guys, think, why would someone get married at 16? Same reason my mom got married when she was 15. She got pregnant with me. And so, okay, let's go ahead and get married. And by the way, they were divorced by the time I was 2. They were divorced and so on. But you are talking worlds apart between 16 and 6.
Right.
16. Guess what? If you look at my mom when she's 15 and 16, yes, she has an adult woman's body. A 6-year-old, not so much.
Those
And so
same
what is
things.
Daniel actually defend? What is Daniel actually defending? He's defending marriage to 6-year-olds. But in this discussion, he pretends that we're just talking about anyone before the age of 18. That's all he has to defend. This is creepy.
I messaged her in the past to invite her to my channel to talk about different things. She didn't respond, despite the fact that she follows me. So she probably saw it, but she refused to respond to it. I just sent her another text to talk about this. Let's see what
Yeah,
she
I'd
said.
love to talk with her about this if she wants to talk with me about it, because I debated Daniel. So I'd love to come on and talk about this, because he also, went on her her channel and advocated for slavery and all sorts of other things. Use a lot. Like I couldn't keep up with the lies. He is just he's a compulsive liar, and he compulsively lies so that he can bring about a dystopia where girls are suffering left and right. Like it's mind-boggling someone could be this evil.
In fact, I will just tell her to invite you on her channel
Sure.
to let you correct
Which
things.
she should. And matter of fact, you should point that out. You should say Daniel said things that are completely false. You obviously had some concern about the things that were being said. Someone can correct, someone who's studied all these articles that Daniel pretends that he's quoting accurately. And he can actually go through there. Please, you don't want your fans to think to walk away thinking that child marriage is okay because of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd be honored to go on and correct that to help diminish the abhorrent nonsense of child marriage. So yeah, anything I can do to help end child marriage, I'm all for.
Society would be much better if we had that type of early marriage where
we do, but you're saying we do, but we just don't choose to do it. I mean,
it's
people
not
just
socially acceptable. I wish it was something that was socially acceptable and seen
No,
as
we
a
don't
that's a
have it, lady. Don't know what he's
Oh.
talking about. He's talking about 4, 5, 6-year-olds. He just dupes you into thinking that he's talking about 16-year-olds. So then you go, we do have that. We do have that. That's not what he's talking about, lady. He's talking about children.
And Daniel's
I mean,
pretending that
she really thinks they're not that far apart. She's like, yeah. I don't like the term pedophilia for minor marriage because I'm thinking of prepubescent. That's exactly what we're talking about. Oh, wow.
And Daniel was just completely wrong that society would be better if we had early marriage. Again, higher divorce rates, higher rates of intimate partner violence, higher rates of death from a 15 or 14-year-old trying to bear a child, higher rates of depression, suicidal thoughts, mental disorders. Like the list just goes on and on of the problems that result, which is why as a society, we have made it socially unacceptable to be married at like 14 or 15 or 16, because we've seen the problems, not just physical, but also mental. So Daniel's living in a fantasy land where he just ignores the scientific literature on this to pretend that it would be better.
it's a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be socially acceptable. I mean, it's one thing if it's legal.
She's talking about
I can
16.
understand, because I agree that, we do kind of pick an arbitrary, we're like, okay, 18, and it's, that's today's society. Previous societies, it was younger, whatever. But I really, to make it socially acceptable. So
previous societies, like, having sex outside of marriage, like as a girlfriend and boyfriend, that's acceptable for minors as young as even 12 years old. Fine. You don't think it's very common for 9-year-olds to be engaged. I agree.
I don't think it's even common for 12-year-olds.
In middle school?
Yeah, I don't. I think that kids start to experiment sexually 16, 15, 16. I mean, maybe some at 14, the early.
Kim is correct. Daniel is wrong. It's not common for 12-year-olds to be having sex. His own source from Health and Human Services, which I showed earlier, shows that average girls start experimenting roughly about half. It's about around the age of 16. 14, it's only like 10 to 14% or so.
Early ones, but I think 16 is.
What's up?
No, it's just she still doesn't know what he's talking about, right? She still doesn't know how bad what he's talking about is. So you've got actual Islam, really, really messed up. You have Daniel's Islam, where you're actually waiting for something. Then you have what Kim thinks he's talking about, which he's not. He's talking about something way worse. And then you have like our position, like, okay, 18's a pretty good number there as far as waiting until girls are actually ready. But there's these levels of depravity going further and further back. And what's the sickest and most depraved? What Islam actually teaches and what Muhammad actually did.
Yeah. Disgusting.
Is like pretty typical, when you could expect that your teenager is maybe fooling around and you probably got to keep an eye on what's going on.
Sure. But let's like give a lower end estimate and say that 10% of minors by the age of 14 have had their first sexual experience.
Daniel, your own source said it's around 14%. That's not a low estimate. That's roughly the average. So his own source shows that this is not a low estimate. That's about the actual estimate.
Society is fine with that 10% number. Like, there's no effort to say that, okay, these 14-year-olds or these 13-year-olds, few as they may be, shouldn't be engaged in that, and we should find measures to stop it. So it is sex.
Yeah, I know. He just makes things up.
Did you ever interact with people? Did you ever check any? He must have come across, when he researched this topic, which he probably doesn't do. He just looks at the abstract, if at all. But he must have come across efforts to, counter early exposure to sexual activities among adolescents and things like that, which is an actual serious issue that is part of psychological studies. You have in schools efforts to minimize such things. You have parents who actively try to minimize such things.
Churches.
Churches. You don't. I mean, society doesn't just say, "Oh, you know what? Kids have sex at the age of before the age of 14." Yeah, whatever. Let them do it.
There's no conservative community in America that's okay with 14-year-olds having sex. Most conservative communities don't want anyone to have sex outside of marriage. Like, you're not going to go to a typical church in America and find this mentality that Daniel's talking about. So he's just lying.
Man.
Sexually, it is socially acceptable. Why is that socially acceptable but not marriage? Is the question that I have. So why can't it be socially acceptable for an 18-year-old to marry a 14-year-old?
He says it is bad.
It's an awful
this early exposure to sexual activity is it is happening, and it is acceptable. Well, therefore, we should just, instead of letting them experiment with sexuality, we should marry them and then experience with them. Wow, man.
And again, guys, think about what he's really talking about here, right? Well, look, if society doesn't go out and arrest 13-year-olds for having sex, well, then I should be allowed to bang a 4-year-old.
The other thing
that's his reasoning. That's his reasoning.
Absolutely. It's insane. And the other thing is, like, he's ignoring the fact that with marriage comes all these other responsibilities and commitments that leads to higher rates of mental disorders, depression, suicidal thoughts, the more likely possibility of bearing children and having the physical complications. He's ignoring all that marriage is a much bigger commitment. So of course society society, for example, modern Christian society can condemn both, but also recognize child marriage comes with all these other issues, like intimate partner violence, depression, suicidal thoughts, that we should obviously classify that as even worse than teens fooling around. Now, we would say both are bad, but obviously one is far worse based on the harm it causes. Child marriage causes so much more harm.
Hey, one more very, very important detail here. When a 12-year-old, let's say a 12-year-old is experimenting sexually, who is that 12-year-old experimenting sexually with?
Another 12-year-old, likely.
Another 12-year-old? Maybe a 13-year-old? Is that what Daniel's talking about?
No.
So he's saying that, this is socially acceptable, meaning that we don't run in and arrest the kids. Okay, suppose it's a 54-year-old sexually experimenting with that 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 10-year-old, 9-year-old. Does society think that's fine? Because that's what he's actually defending.
Yes.
A 54-year-old having sex with a 9-year-old. That's what he's saying. Is society fine with that? Do you know anyone who's fine with that? I don't know anyone who's fine with that except actual pedophiles. I do not know a person who thinks that it's okay for a 54-year-old to have sex with a 9-year-old, married or not married. I don't know anyone who thinks that except pedophiles. And
Correct.
Daniel is here defending it. And he defends it by pretending, well, but 12-year-olds have sex, so why don't we just adopt the Islamic position? The Islamic position is that guys in their 50s can go around having sex with these little girls.
That's what Muhammad did. Yeah, this is important.
In my debate with Daniel, he defended it by citing a study that NAMBLA used and has still used, which actually didn't say that girls have good sexual experience. The paper directly said girls have negative sexual experiences, but the boys report positive sexual experiences. That's why NAMBLA used it. Other studies came out and debunked it, which NAMBLA ignored. But Daniel cited it because he didn't actually read it.
Yeah, guys, what's that exactly? It's something about man-boy love or something like that. Man-boy
North
love
American
association.
man-boy. Yeah, that's it.
The North of guys, this is Daniel Haqiqatjou citing the North American Man-Boy Love Association for his evidence to defend child marriage. Guys, I mean, this is like mind-boggling that this is standard in Dawa now. This is standard in Dawa. You quote you go to pedophile organizations to defend pedophilia.
Yeah, he didn't actually cite NAMBLA. He cited the same study that they always run to. So they're both using the same dumb arguments,
Oh, okay. Well, that makes
Dawa,
a little bit
ladies and gentlemen.
18-year-old, like that kind of minor marriage. They're like,
what do you want to say?
No, I'm good. We're good.
Like it's fine for a 17-year-old to be sexually involved with a 14-year-old or younger.
Yeah.
But somehow marriage makes it weird or makes it somehow
not what
illegal
we're
or
talking about.
offensive. I don't understand the logic of that.
Well, the logic, I think, would have nothing to do with morality at all. It would just have to do with economics. I mean, an 18-year-old, anybody under the age of 18 is not really able to support themselves because the jobs out there are not hiring 16-year-olds for full-time jobs.
Well, easy solution. I'm very well off. Let me marry the kids and I'll take care of them.
Yeah. That's why I'm advocating that grown men who are already retired old men and are financially well off, they have houses and so on, because they're old men who've completed their life courses. That's why they should be banging little 5-year-old girls. So the little 5-year-old girl is completely financially stable.
Even my laptop says it. I'm a predator. Look at that.
To be fair, I think Daniel does go on to say that, he's okay with like 15 and 13-year-olds getting married and then they just live with their parents, which is okay, whatever. He still is ignoring all the research that shows all the harm that comes out of that. Higher rates of divorce, intimate partner violence, like suicidal thoughts, mental disorders. So that he did say in my debate with him that mentioned like a 22-year-old marrying like a 12-year-old. Like, is that okay? Obviously not. But yeah, it seems like you're absolutely right, David. It seems like she's talking about one thing and not realizing that Daniel is talking about the marriage to the 6-year-olds as if that's normal. Utterly ridiculous.
That's what's happening here.
Ahmadi's nuts. Didn't you guys just debate some Ahmadis recently?
Yep, we debated, and we're listening to some of the arguments of Tahir, and we're just sitting there thinking, man, this Ahmadi's nuts, man.
Yeah. The same guy that you debated. Yeah, they were terrible.
Oh yeah,
they were.
It was fun debate. I mean, you're going to give me an easy softball. I'm happy to do it. So I think the comment about Daniel resembling Snorlax is very insulting to all Snorlaxes.
That's true. That's true. As an early Pokemon fan, I find this kind of inappropriate, but yeah, whatever.
Momo died when Aisha turned 18. Coincidence?
Yep, he's like, now she's an adult. No point in living.
Damn, Daniel. Muslims lie so much the devil should retire. They're doing all the work for him, yeah. Is he Mossad? Every time Dawa talking points start making inroads among anti-Jew schizos, he shows up to defend child sex and manages to lose support.
Oh, I was actually going to ask you about that. I was like, why would Kim Iversen have him on her show to defend child marriage? Is that the thing? Like, AP, I'm sure you've been following this a little more, but is it the case of hey, I hate Jews. He hates Jews. Let me get this other guy who hates Jews and
I
hates
hate
Israel
Jews.
on my channel.
You hate
On my
Jews.
channel. But then Daniel sees, oh, now I have this awesome opportunity that I hate Jews so much that all these other people who hate Jews want me on their channels, and now I can go on their channels to defend pedophilia.
It
Is
sounds
that
very
the
funny
situation?
when you say it, but the whole hating Jews and hating Israel is actually what brought Kim closer to
Yep.
the to Muslim apologists and Daniel Haqiqatjou, and which probably led to her inviting Daniel Haqiqatjou. So it is all
Well, this guy's posting awesome tweets about destroying Israel. Let me get him on here. Wait, he's defending child marriage. Okay, well, I guess it can't be all bad
even
if it's
better.
coming from a guy who wants to destroy Jews.
Yeah, and there's another
People are
segment where he defended
insane. They're insane.
slavery.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. Don't have time to get to that nonsense. The trademark Danny smirk when lying is back. Yeah, Daniel's got a smirking problem when he knows he's in trouble or lying.
Mhm.
I think we've seen it before. AP, you've
Yeah,
mentioned
he's got a nervous
Yeah,
grin
yeah,
when he
yeah.
when he lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you heard-
it's funny that you mentioned hating Jews together and then talking about using the opportunity to talk about pedophilia, because remember that's what I tricked him into when I had my debate with him.
Yeah, I remember that. It was great.
I just let him talk about child marriage. Totally derailed the topic, and he actually fell for it and went ahead with it. Man.
Shake, what do you mean by D's nuts? Peterson says, have you heard of D's? I have not.
Alhamdulillah.
Dr. David Wood is the best. Oh, and IP and AP are good too. Thanks, Nicholas.
Yeah.
You can go
They're all right.
somewhere else. Yeah.
They're all right.
Buff IP says, I am Buff IP. What are you talking about? Daniel Pikachu's favorite Netflix series is Cuties. Ugh. Probably.
Didn't Sneeko say that at some point? Like his favorite movie's Cuties or something? I think Sneeko said that?
I think he
recall
said he
Sneeko saying
likes it or something like that. I heard that. I
Something
don't
like that,
know.
yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
I'm going to look it up.
Just to play devil's advocate, how do you respond to the fact that there was no direct textual criticism of Muhammad's marriage to Aisha? I think he's talking about the hadiths, like them being late or something. Is that what he's getting at?
No. He's saying, how come you don't read criticisms of Muhammad's marriage to Aisha?
Okay.
And therefore, if there are no criticisms, then it must be fine. It must have been viewed as fine or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard Muslims make this argument. It's stupid. It just shows the culture was very evil, and Muhammad was a product of his own culture, not divinely inspired by God.
Yeah, and it's something they would never take seriously anywhere else. If I said, "Hey, there was not one criticism of drinking beer in this culture. How can you criticize it?" Well, you can say, "Hey, even if everyone agreed it's fine, you could still say they're wrong."
I still maintain when so Muslims say that it was normal in that and at that time and in that environment to marry children at that age. I don't think I can actually dispute that it was that claim that it was normal in that environment where Muhammad was at that time, that it was normal. So I think it makes complete sense that in Muhammad's environment in Mecca and Medina, it was probably acceptable to do such a thing. It was lots of things were probably acceptable in that environment, because we have lots of evidence that the environment that he was in was a very backward, very savage, very uneducated, very primitive environment that was far detached, that was centuries behind in terms of enlightenment compared to surrounding cultures, compared to the Eastern Roman Empire society, right, or the Iranians, for example. They were far ahead of this isolated desert region of 7th century Arabia. That's just not an argument. It's a very stupid one. It just shows that Muhammad lived in a very poorly educated environment, and he was a product of it, and we shouldn't see that as a moral example.
1940s. Oh, go ahead. What is it?
I just wanted it because we were asking what Sneeko actually said. I looked it up. Sneeko said, what's the date? March 31st, 2023, so over a year ago. Sneeko said, Cuties is really about how important Islamic values are in the face of satanic wokeness. I love Cuties.
What?
Yeah. Nico tends to joke
Say
and so on,
dumb
but
Look, there is one thing, to be very fair, there is one thing, which is that lots of people who got very angry at the whole cuties thing actually misunderstood what cuties is about. So to be very fair, it is the
oh, now
movie is
AP's defending
actually
it.
the movie is actually a critique
A
of
masterpiece.
the over sexualization and derailment and objectification and materialistic aspect of children and all of that. The problem is, however, that while the movie critiques that, it just contributes to that by putting the girls out there. It's like making a movie about child abuse and then actually abusing the children. You know.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. 1940s AP. If you want to get rid of Daniel, we know a thing or two. How?
Nice.
Weird comments. Yo, who invited this beta non-Bizen Edgar and Gooner AP, who is big nerd, who has no gets Riz or female dogs? David is also a nerd, geek, dork, wonk, bookworm, weenie, hut junior, lowbrow, slacker, and goof off. Mike Winger is king.
Block this dude. Block this dude now while you still can.
I recently bought the Hero Sheep t-shirt. Looking forward to wearing it at work. Awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have a t-shirt in my merch store, which is a sheep. And it's the passage about the sheep editing the Quran by eating it, and it just says hero on top.
Daniel, if he was Jordan Peterson, what do you mean by minor? What do you mean by minor? How about no? I don't buy your puberty.
Hey, that's not bad. It's not as good as AP's, but it's pretty good.
Oh no, nothing's as good as AP. I can do a pretty good Smeagol though, but not Jordan Peterson. I'm a new convert. Can I have a few tips on where to start? I feel lost. And also, can we have that slide or study? Please, it would be helpful. Yeah, you can always just look up a lot of the slides or the studies. I mean, you just Google the titles of the studies I use, you'll get copies. So I recommend just doing that half the time. Tips on starting. First of all, get in a good church, get a good pastor, get in a good Bible study. You can't grow unless you're not part of a group. If you want to grow as a Christian, you need to be around other believers. I go to an evening prayer Bible study every week, and I go to church every week because I realize how important that stuff is. So do that. Check out some books. A good books to start would be with C.S. Lewis. He's very good at just giving you the basics of Christianity. So start with his book like The Great Divorce, Mere Christianity, Till We Have Faces. Those are good places to start. But the most important thing is being part of a body of believers. I've known like people that were agnostic who started going to a Bible study in church and then became Christian just from being absorbed in the culture, hearing the arguments, getting to weigh them more fairly when people are presenting them, so they're getting kind of both sides from believers and non-believers kind of thing. So get involved in a church, start going through the motions, and that will help you grow for sure.
And I'll just add, don't marry a child.
That's true. That should be a given, but yeah. Daniel's face is so annoying to look at. Daniel, Haqiqatjou is what happens when gooning goes too far. If I had gamble on how much command power Daniel has, I would bet at least 1 terabyte.
Wonderful comments.
There is a bizarre trend that Muslims seem to believe the harder you believe in something, the more true it is. Yeah, that is true. And the less hard position you take, the more weak you are, irrespective of the truth. Yeah, it's very much a culture revolving around power and structure and order. Truth is put on the back burner. And I have experienced that a lot. That just, as long as we're getting power, it doesn't matter how we get it. We can lies, deception, conquest, you name it. That's what's important. Truth takes a backseat to that ultimately.
That's pretty Islamophobic.
I know, and I don't care. Keep it up, Daniel, destroying Islam. Yeah, he's doing a great job of it. We have to, my hat's off to him. He's done more damage to Islam than any of us could ever do. It's been great.
He's my favorite, to be honest. I think he does a great job.
Yeah, it's a tough call between Ali Dawah, Muhammad Hijab, and Daniel Haqiqatjou, but My goodness, these guys. Awesome stuff. I mean, just imagine spending 20 years of your life trying to show that Islam teaches things, and the entire time you're called a liar, and all of a sudden they shout it from the rooftops, and now everyone knows that Islam teaches it. It's like, it's like, I mean, it's serious. It's serious. It's seriously like just going through a desert, and it's just like this barren wasteland of trying to make a point, and it doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere. And all of a sudden, this oasis of rivers and trees is there all of a sudden. That's what I'm not joking. That's exactly what it feels like in this age of dawah, where everything they said we were lying about 10 years ago, they now brag about.
I think that Muhammad Hijab and Al-Dawa have nothing on Daniel Haqiqatjou, though. He's definitely my favorite. He's the best at destroying Islam. He's also the only one that I personally support totally, like financially, mentally, physically, whatever.
Yeah. Got 80 minutes in and have to mute when video rolls and stare. Can't look at that face. Should God bless you all for tackling this stomach churning garbage. Yeah, it is absolutely that. And what is an odd fact about PDFs that you have found? They're compulsive liars to support their deranged activities, and so are their apologists like Daniel.
And you can open them with different applications. Yeah.
That's
hey. Perfect example here. Mott and Bailey fallacy. I was thinking the same thing. I didn't know if we wanted to get into the Mott and Bailey fallacy, but it's the exact same thing. So guys, the Mott and Bailey fallacy is that the Mott is like a little like tower, like tower in an area, and then the Bailey is the surrounding area. And so the Mott and Bailey fallacy is when you act like you're defending a territory, but by just retreating to like an impregnable little fortress or something like that. So when you come to criticize child marriage, he runs back to just defending whether it's okay to have sex with a minor who's 17 years old, because it's more. So the idea is you're not actually defending what's being attacked. You retreat to a position that is far more easy to defend, and it is far more easy to defend the idea of having sex with a 17-year-old girl than with a 5-year-old girl. But yeah, so I think you totally call this the Mott and Bailey fallacy.
Oh, he's absolutely right. Yeah, that's right. This Daniel Rizajou reminds me of a few people like Muhammad, Herbert from Family Guy, Epstein, Freddy Krueger remake, Dan Schneider, Dr. Disrespect, anyone from when Cartman joined NAMBLA, and Jeffrey Dowsett. There are similarities. Kim is such an idiot. YouTube won't let me say worse. Out of curiosity, what's the study NAMBLA used that you mentioned? I can't imagine any reputable sociologist saying minors having sex is good. Oh, I can tell you flat out. It was Bruce Ryan's meta-analysis from 1998. It was huge controversy. Even Congress condemned it. Like it got a huge amount of criticism. Bruce Ryan and his co-authors, or one of them, was invited to speak actually at like a pro-pedophilia conference in the Netherlands. He's been criticized greatly, and there was an umbrella study that came out which looked at all the various meta-analysis, found that the Ryan study from 1998 was an outlier. It most definitely does not represent the majority of data. He used on like self-reported measures of just like college students, for example, which was problematic. So he ignored a lot of the relevant literature that, or subjects that would be more likely affected it, because other researchers came along and made the case that if you've been sexually abused as a child, you're going to suffer from mental issues and you're less likely to go to college. So it was a very select sample size. So yeah, it's the Ryan study from 1998. I'm sure you could look that up. So Bruce Ryan, R-I-N-D. And yeah, Haqiqatjou cited that in my debate with him, and I already was prepared and showed him that he didn't even read it. So yeah, that's the name of the study.
Imagine studying umbrellas. What a waste of time.
Exactly. I do all sorts of dumb things.
I have to say, it's kind of weird that IP just knows all this NAMBLA stuff off the top of his head.
Yeah.
It gotta be know thy enemy. As a Christian convert, we get fed Jew haters like E. Michael Jones. I cannot believe I have to share a name with him. And the writings of Justinus, Pradinus, Nicholas Dolan, Alice Huda. Thank God for Don Goldstein. I'm pretty sure this is someone who seems to be anti-Semitic. seems to be I don't know. I would recommend you read Romans 11, for example, if you want to know about what your position should be on anti-Semitism. It's very clear that being anti-Semitic is anti-Christian. So just keep that in mind. Does the New Testament have actual prophets post-Jesus? Matthew 11:13, Luke 16:16, but there are prophets recorded in Acts. Does the original Greek meant Old Testament-like prophets? Yeah, I mean, you do have some sort of prophetic continuation, but they're nowhere near as like in the sense that someone is going to write scripture. They're inspired to actually write aspects of scripture. It's just supposed to be for helping guide certain communities, and supposed to be very rare and limited from what I can gather. It's not something that's every church is going to have like their residential prophet. So, and if someone really is a prophet, they're not going to be seeking, spotlights or glorification, because that's not the position the prophet should take. So you do have some sort of continuation of it, but in a more limited sense, not in the idea that anyone could inspire scripture. You should try getting a Dr. Andrew Browning on to discuss the health impacts. He's an OBGYN who lived and worked at the Hamlin Hospital in Ethiopia repairing fistulas. Yeah, that'd be interesting to talk to. Wow. I'm sure he'd have a lot of interesting stories.
Matter of fact, IP, that might be
IP too.
That might be a very important approach. Get on an expert on the health problems and just go down the list explaining exactly what happens and exactly what the statistics are and so on, and describe it and describe personal experiences of having to help girls who have been victims of this. And then say, hey, and Daniel's saying, hey, it's all worth it as long as you get to bang little girls.
Any non-emotional counter to might makes right. So the idea that might makes right. I mean, a non-emotional encounter. For one, you could argue from a virtue ethical standpoint. It would depend on your normative ethical position. If you take a virtue ethical standpoint and you take a moral realist approach, you would argue that might makes right in many ways encourages vices, not necessarily virtues. And you want to create more virtues in people: love, joy, patience, peace, kindness, these kinds of things. If you're focusing on might makes right, you're not going to spread virtues, cultivate virtues. You're going to cultivate power, greed, vices, these kinds of things. And so that would be a non-emotional response to what I would say.
Yeah, and just look up book 1 of the Republic, where Thrasymachus was basically arguing might makes right, and Socrates crushed and humiliated him into almost complete silence for the other 9 books.
It's good. I forgot about that. Just to clarify, I meant other cultures at the time didn't say anything about their marriages. Some did, yeah. What do
you mean? What do you mean other cultures? We'll see this claim from Muslims. You can't even find reliable references to Muhammad, period. What are you talking about? Oh, but the other cultures didn't talk about Muhammad's marriage. They didn't talk about Muhammad's marriage at all. They didn't talk about any of his marriages. What are you talking about? They didn't. No one has heard of this guy existing. And let alone, I mean, suppose you eventually you're in some culture. Let's suppose you're in Europe and you eventually hear about this guy, Muhammad. Are you like, oh yeah, and he married a 6-year-old? You think that information was conveyed to you, and you think we have records of that, and therefore, if we don't have records of people criticizing it, therefore no one would have had a problem with it? That's like insanely sloppy reasoning.
Yeah. So the one idea that they present often is that until very recent times, it wasn't a common critique, or it was never found. This critique globally that Muhammad is a pedophile because he married a little child. The issue is, as David just said, you won't find much about what Muhammad did and said in extra Islamic sources until very recent times. Even when certain people from different religions approached and talked about Islam or criticized Islam, they never went into much detail on what Islam actually teaches, on what Muhammad actually did, and so on. Doing this whole in-depth analysis is something that is very new. So it's not a surprise that you don't find this in different sources for 1,400 years. Lots of people weren't exposed to Muhammad's life and the things that he did or did not do. This is all very new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's yeah. So guys, think about this. I first heard about Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. It was in this somewhere 1997, 1998. I heard it in prison from a guy who was read it in a Voice of the Martyrs magazine. And I thought, there's no way. Bull. I dismissed it. I was like, there's no way. There's no way the founder of this massive religion had sex with a 9-year-old girl. It's this nonsense. It wasn't until later responding to arguments from Nabil when I actually get the hadith, and then it's all over the place. And that's when I find out, and it's like, whoa, this is all over the place. But seriously, until non-Muslims actually have open access to their sources, who knows about this?
Mm-hmm.
Go back 20 years and find almost anyone on the planet who's not a Muslim scholar who knows about this. So what do you actually find? When people find out about it, they massively criticize it. That's our actual data. When people find out that Muhammad had sex with a prepubescent girl, then they condemn it. You say, oh, but they weren't condemning it before what? Before they knew about it? Yeah. Most people don't condemn it before they know about it. That's true. Most people do not condemn Muhammad having sex with a prepubescent girl until they actually know about it. But I don't know how you're going to make an argument based on that.
Why did they not criticize it then if they didn't know about it?
IP and David Wood's bookshelves have nothing on Sam Shamoon's kitchen microwave background. AP not even trying. Hear that? Got him.
My bookshelf
What do you
is
mean
in
he
my
is trying?
head.
He's got that little pile of books.
Oh yeah.
There you go. You're getting some. Yeah.
Yeah.
Work
How to
on that a
read
little
books. Books read me.
bit. May you define Christian fundamentalism exactly? I mean, like fundamentalism is like a form of religion that upholds like a strict literal interpretation of scripture. So often you'll see fundamentalism associated with like the strict punishments of like Levitical law need to be like imposed today. You need to have like a very strict young earth reading of Genesis, these kinds of things. It doesn't, in sociology, it's this really strict idea of holding to like this very fundamentalist reading of scripture. And it's not the majority of religious people, but that's generally how it's defined in sociology, just the strict literal reading of scripture, the idea that certain Levitical laws need to apply to people today, this kind of stuff. And it's all and when you get into sociological reports, it's singled out as another variable. Most people that are religious are either going to be intrinsic or extrinsically religious, and then a small portion will be fundamentalist. So some will also be another category called quest. That's another topic, but yeah, that's typically how it's defined in sociology. Daniel, my favorite disciple from Sheikh Manuts. You heard it. Got to run, but at a random question. What's your favorite theodicy IP? No need to explain it if you don't have time. Don't want to derail. Yeah, see my video.
Let me get soul building.
No. My favorite theodicy would be the law of triumph.
Building. Come on, man.
Kind of related to
That's
it, but related. It's the law of triumph. Like I presented in my video, the problem of suffering, a Christian response. And so my favorite theodicy is to appeal to the law of triumph. Something I've been working on a little bit here. Little more Daniel brain rot. Names like Daniel Edgiagoon, Daniel Fappin there's so many here, man. Daniel he yappin dude, Daniel he backshot Jew. I don't know if I can read these. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble from YouTube or something.
Yeah.
But we see they're on screen. So there. You can see all his lovely names he's come up with.
Yeah, this is what happens when one of AP's fans comes over from his channel. AP, you need to just quit telling people when you're going to be on a channel because these horrible people are going to show up and
this is why
say a
I
bunch
tell
of things and no one
this is
understands
why
them.
I let everyone know. This is why I invite everyone. It's powerful.
Not on topic, but why was Muhammad?
If it has nothing to do with the topic, don't ask it.
Why was Muhammad dating a dark-skinned girl in Song of Solomon instead of a transparent, pale-skinned one?
Good question.
Good question. We don't know. We will never know the answer to that. Don Eden Goldstein is a Catholic. That super chat was written clumsy. E. Michael Jones is an issue. I just wonder what circles fed him his works. Very fringe. Yeah, it does sound fringe. So appreciate
The guy has
clarification
mental
on that.
problems. Pretty
E.
sure.
Michael Jones. Yeah. I see some of the stuff he says. I'm like, oh God, come on. I hate when people confuse me with him. Why are those who absorb cultural anti-Semitism like G.K. Chesterton were Zionists, but modern anti-Semites believe the Khazar myth despite DNA evidence? I don't know why people believe the Khazar myth. It's utter nonsense. Why are those who absorb cultural antis like GK were Zionists? But I don't understand what you're asking here, sir. The Khazar myth is nonsense. I just know that DNA evidence debunks it over and over again.
Yeah, it is. It is complete nonsense. There is no reason to believe in it unless you just have a problem with Jews. That's it.
Yeah, like Muslim Cowboy, who's cited that nonsense before. God, that guy's an idiot. Do you guys think modern Israel is a step in prophecy? I think so, but just want to know what you guys think. My opinion, no. I'm a post-millennialist. The third temple is already here. It's called the body of Christ. Nothing, in my view, of the eschaton revolves around the nation state of Israel. Not even involved. I'm an atheist ex-Muslim, but all three of you guys are awesome. Keep up the great work. Islam is definitely the most dangerous religion. Yeah, I would agree with that. By far, it is. If Scientology was more popular, I might favor that. But fundamentalists like Salafi Islam is definitely a huge problem for sure. If more Islam was like, Ismaili, I probably wouldn't care as much.
Well, it's good that you're an ex-Muslim. It's a good thing that you're an ex-Muslim. But one thing that all of us here in this live stream can agree on is that you should become a Christian.
All of us. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Totally.
When Abu Bakr asked Muhammad to marry his daughter Fatima, Muhammad said she's too... Fatima, sorry. Muhammad said she's too young, but when Muhammad told Abu Bakr he's marrying Aisha, Abu Bakr had to accept it. What's everyone's thoughts?
Yep, that is true. So, yeah, there are hadiths about Muhammad's companions offering to marry his daughter Fatima, and he's saying she's too young. Now, the one thing I haven't been able to find is exactly how young she was, but I can't imagine she's younger than 6. And so I actually bought a book on the history of Fatima so that I could maybe try and find exactly when these marriage proposals were. But whatever the case, maybe it seems like Muhammad's just being inconsistent. Like, oh, I want to have sex with that little girl over there. Therefore, hey, give me her. And then when they're like, hey, well, we can marry your daughter. And what? She's too young for this stuff. And so it seems to be.
Are you crazy?
He seems to understand the problem if it's his daughter, but not if it's someone else's daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out her age.
By the way, if anyone knows a source on the actual timeline, how old Fatima, because I don't think they were proposing when she was like 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. She was obviously older than that. So if anyone knows exactly, if a source on exactly how old she was when marriage was being proposed, that would be relevant to this discussion.
Oh, this is actually a question that came up during the debate, Mike, that you had with Daniel. It actually came up during the debate. Somebody actually asked Daniel about this during the Q&A section, where he said that different standards apply, and we don't know what the circumstances were, or something like that. I don't remember exactly his response, but this was asked. Yeah.
Wasn't all of Daniel Haqiqatjou's arguments just too coquet? Well, he often does that, like very much like, oh, you allow child marriage in some states if a judge approves. Therefore, what's wrong with what we doing it? A lot of what he does is basically too coquet, for sure.
That's correct.
That's his favorite.
It's a mixture. It's a mixture of fallacies. Tu quoque, straw man, and Mott and Bailey, all to defend pedophilia. And guys, if you can only defend a position with endless fallacies, that's probably tells you something about your position. No, lying and fallacies. If a position can only be defended with lying and fallacies, probably need a new position.
But Daniel's favorite fallacy is, oh, so you're against Islamic morality. You're against marrying early. Aha, that means you want a society where women become addicted to drugs, and then they raise children,
and then they all
also become addicted.
And then they all go on OnlyFans,
public toilets, and women become OnlyFans.
And they all go on OnlyFans, and they have to eat bug paste all day.
Yeah, this complete.
That's the other thing. He always has.
Yeah. This false dilemma where he says
he's the king of the false dilemmas.
If you don't agree with my stance, then you are for the opposite. Then the opposite is the world will go completely insane and everyone will suffer and become drug addicted and everyone will be a prostitute and so on. It's so insane.
It is.
Yeah, he does that. He does that regularly. He was kind of hinting at it, even in this discussion of, "Oh, you're against the girls being married, but if we don't, then all these little girls are going to be getting banged all the time in 3rd grade. So you have to marry them." So it's one or the other. Either girls are all just getting banged outside of marriage, or we marry them. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. There's no other position.
No. Hey, Michael, how do you solve the trolley problem? Well, it depends on which trolley problem. There's like a bunch, and I'm a virtue ethicist. We don't like them. We tend to just say they're not realistic. So
AP made one.
You know,
AP made the best
I
trolley
forgot
problem.
about that.
He made a trolley problem where the train is heading towards running over 5 people, and if you divert the train, then it runs over a copy of the Quran. And he had all these people. He had all these people who would just let it run over people so as to avoid running over the Quran.
oh, welcome to Dawah.
I forgot about that. Wow.
All hams to Allah. Daniel Haqiqatjou was debating a half brain. Sahih Bukhari 2658. Finally, a fair debate. I'm an AP fan, by the way. Yeah, we know.
It's a fair debate because he was debating a half brain.
If someone serves chili made with a 14-month-old brisket, do they get excommunicated?
Yes.
Sure. Why not? David, what is a
Well,
secret
was the brisket frozen that entire time?
Yeah, good question. David, what is a super secret nerd wing to Allah? To Allah. You heard it here first, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Why do Muslims just take the hard stance that child marriage is always good instead of pretending to care about maturity? Instead, considering Aisha was by no means physically mature.
That is indisputable from the sources. She was definitely not mature, physically mature or mentally.
Okay. I'm not anti-Semitic IP. Don Eden Goldstein is a Jewish Catholic convert who focuses on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a cancer that stops Jews inquiring. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Just some of the comment, I couldn't tell. I don't know if it was just I was reading them wrong or I didn't understand what you meant. But yeah, it sounded like you weren't when you said your earlier comment about the Khazar myth being debunked by DNA. So at that point, I didn't think you were. But yeah, it's yeah.
I understand IP here because it's very because of these gropers and their methods. It has become very, very difficult to when somebody goes into these topics to see if that person is actually an anti-Semitic groper or seriously concerned or something.
Yeah, I've gotten super chats from them where they're being sarcastic, and I'm like reading them and going, "Wait a minute, I can't tell if they're being sarcastic or not." So, but I appreciate the clarification. It didn't seem like you were from your last comment. So,
who calls himself groper anyway? Like, what a stupid thing.
Groper, the stupidest name for a movement ever.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Hey, you know what'd be funny? If the Gropers had a big conference, they should have it in Cleveland, and they could call it Groper Cleveland.
What?
I think they did one in Ohio recently, maybe in Cincinnati, actually. Or no, it was Michigan. They did one in Michigan.
It sounds like a president, AP. Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland.
Oh,
Grover
okay,
Cleveland.
okay. I'm trying to. Okay, yeah. Okay, now I get it.
He's catching up. No.
Okay. Yeah.
I have it on good authority that Daniel is not part of Mossad. If he was, we would end the Scandinavian branch of Mossad immediately. Can't have that kind of colleagues. Is this in reference to something that you guys have said? Because I don't know.
No, but he's definitely Muslim. Yeah.
He's definitely
he's definitely Mossad.
He's sent to destroy Islam from within.
Yes.
There are many Muslims that think that. I think there's one female Muslim that is pretty sure he is and has debated Daniel in the past. So.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh. All right. Final thoughts. Are you guys convinced of child marriage yet? Are you guys ready to, climb on board for that?
What's the difference between Daniel Haqiqatjou and hips?
I don't know what.
Hips don't lie.
But unchained.
Yeah. I mean, at first I thought, because of the overwhelming data showing how dangerous it is, both for the girl and for any potential offspring should she get pregnant, given how massively dangerous it is for girls who are 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 to start having sex and then getting pregnant and so on. you know, first I thought that child marriage would be a bad idea, especially Islamic child marriage, where you can have sex with a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, whatever. First, I was thinking that it was bad, but then Daniel Haqiqatjou came in and pointed out that, hey, 18 is kind of arbitrary. What about 17 and a half? There wouldn't be much difference there. And oh yeah, in earlier cultures, and even in some parts of the United States, they didn't require you to wait until 18. And therefore, I now renounce all medical data and conclude that it is perfectly acceptable for a 54-year-old man to bang a 9-year-old girl. And therefore, I withdraw my objections to Muhammad being a child molesting, murdering rapist.
That's good progress. Yeah.
AP, let me know if you hear anything from Kim. I'll contact her too to see if she wants to have a conversation, because I'd happily go on there to debunk all this and show how evil.
Here's how you do it. Here's how you do it. Whoever's contacting her, first contact her and say, hey, you had Daniel Haqiqatjou on. He said some things, blah blah blah. He completely misrepresented some sources. Yeah. Okay, so there. If she doesn't respond, or if she says no, not interested, then say, hey, there's this guy who really hates Israel and wants to destroy Jews. Could you get him on there? And while he's on there, maybe you discuss something else, and then she'll agree to that, and then he can go on.
Thank you for all your work. Will you guys be at ETS later this year? And if so, are you still ready for that Carolina Reaper, David? I will be at ETS. It's in San Diego this year. I was just there looking for Sheikh Uthman. He was not at Balboa Park at all. I went there like three days looking for him. Never showed up. So, but yeah, I'll be at ETS.
EPS is San Diego this year.
Yeah, San Diego in November.
Yeah, I think I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. Sorry for late response. YouTube did not let me use the words terminate. Took me a while to find out which could send my super chat. Thank you all three for speaking about these things. Yeah, appreciated. But yeah, I'll be at ETS running around. I probably have a bunch of talks I want to attend. Anything you guys have coming up on the weekend on your channels? Or have you not figured it out yet?
Hey, AP, I just noticed that Pierce Morgan had Pink Floyd on with him.
What?
Yep. He had Roger Waters on there. Roger Waters does not like Israel, but he had him on there. It might be good to recover, because that's one that gives me mixed feelings. On the one hand, they're my favorite band of all time. On the other hand, Roger Waters seems to be an anti-Semitic piece of garbage. And yet the title of the exchange is "I'm not anti-Semitic." So he says he's not anti-Semitic. So we might have to. Is Pink Floyd or is Roger Waters anti-Semitic?
1 hour show. That's.
I'm going live on Friday. We'll be going live on Friday, going through some dawah responses to arguments against Muhammad. That'll be fun.
Does Israel have a right to exist? Was October 7th a false flag? This seems terrible. But yeah, I'll have a look.
Yeah, awesome.
Inshallah.
All right. Appreciate you guys coming on. We're always responding. If Daniel does any more child marriage stuff, I will respond on my channel, and I'll bring these two.
He will. He will. Trust me. He will. It's an obsession.
I'm going to make him regret the day he ever challenged me to debate that, because I will be a thorn in his side.
He already does.
For the rest of his life.
He does. And guys, one of the ultimate takeaways is, I mean, if your ideology just somehow requires this massive defense of having sex with little girls, I mean, if that doesn't convince you that you need to closely examine your reasons for believing your religion, I don't know what would.
Yeah. So we love talking about child marriage. So if it comes up again with Daniel Haqiqatjou, we will definitely be back, because we love every opportunity whenever we can come together and talk about child marriage. This is what we do.
Yeah. We ended up being the defenders of children around the world. Not sure how that happened.
Yes. It's powerful.
All right. Next week, I'll be back on my channel, probably reviewing some Billy Carson nonsense, since he's been getting kind of popular lately. And my video will be out next week, arguing for the reliability of Mark as an eyewitness source of evidence. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate both you guys coming on my channel. I'll have you guys back on when you guys have the time, or if there's any more stupid dawah stuff I find. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. We're going to